I'm Elisa Richards, Chairperson of the Utah Geological Survey Board, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Utah Geological Survey Board to order. I gotta have to do that. I haven't been able to do that for a year, so hey, super excited. It is now, what time is it?
I show 8:32.
8:32. It's now 8:32 a.m. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually. In compliance with Utah's open meeting laws, this meeting is being recorded in its entirety, and this recording is classified as a public record. Following board members are in attendance: Elisa Richards, Mark Eccles, Rick Chestnut, Ken Fleck, Sam Quigley, and Tom Faddis. The following board members are absent: Pete Kilborn and Dave Garbrett.
Dave's right there.
Oh, there's Dave. Okay, hi Dave.
Dave is here.
That was smooth. Nice. Great timing. The following individuals representing the Utah Geological Survey and the Department of Natural Resources are in attendance: Jay Hill, Mike Hylland, Bill Keach, Jodi Patterson. I believe Cheryl Guston is remote.
Yes.
Brennan Young and Deanne Morgan. And
I'm Steve.
yeah, I've got Steve Bowman, and I've got you, Tom. Good. All right, Jay Hill, Brennan Young, Steve Bowman, and Morgan. Deanne. If we welcome all visitors and interested persons at this time, please be sure to sign in the attendance report for the meeting and identify yourself before speaking. As a courtesy to everyone participating in this meeting at this time, we ask for all cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices to be turned off or changed to silent mode. Board motions and votes must be reflected in the minutes and recorded by individual board member. Now let us proceed with the agenda.
Okay. So I think the next thing is to do is the formal approval of the projects proposals.
Approval of minutes.
Approval of
April
minutes
14th.
first.
Okay, I have to get a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 14th.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the last board meeting on April 14th, 2021.
Great. And can I get
Mark Eccles.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll second that, Rick Chestnut.
All right, do we need any discussion at that point, any corrections or any discussion about the minutes? Nope, the approval of the minutes of UGS meeting April 14th. We vote yea or nay on this one? We need to. Okay, let's have a formal vote. All those in favor of approving the board minutes from April 14th, 2021, vote yea.
Yay.
Nay?
That was a yay?
It was from, I think from
Ken.
Ken Fleck, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The minutes of the UGS meeting, April 14th, 2021 have been approved since the last meeting. And what's the next item, Bill?
The formal approval of the project proposals that got emailed around
Okay,
since the last board meeting.
right. I'd like to go ahead and have a motion to formally approve the project proposals from the last meeting. Need a motion to approve?
Mark Eccles, I'll make a motion to approve the contract proposals previously approved by the board.
Dave Garbrett, I'll second.
Thank you. Dave is second the approval. Any discussion needed for the formal approval of project proposals since the last meeting? Maybe you need to make a comment?
I would like to make a comment. There's an impressive increase in the number of these proposals where we're getting paid the full amount, not half or some fraction of it. And I went back and looked at the ones we did on the 14th of April, and we had one that was that was full pay. On this one, we have 11 proposals and 5 of them are full pay, although I noticed some of them have not gotten approved apparently by the other side. But that's good work.
I think there's at least 3 on this page here, right?
There are 3 on the first page and 2 on the second page.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
Yeah, that's great progress.
Wrong way.
All of those Thank you, Mark. All of those to vote yay for the approval of the project proposal since the last meeting. Vote yay.
Yay.
Yay. And nay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The formal approval of the project proposals since the last meeting, they are approved, and let's move on.
Get started. Okay, so I think the next item I had was new personnel. A couple of them won't be here yet. But we've got Brennan Young in the back. And Brennan has worked off and on over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so my first time entering PGS was back in '06.
Oh.
And no, that was right after high school. And I came back in my early years of getting my DS at USU. And now I'm back at the tail end of my PhD, which I'm getting from Texas A&M.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Very good, Brandon.
So I was surprised to find out we'd never introduced Brennan. So, well, anyway, we're glad to have Brennan. And Deanne Morgan, tell us a little about who you are and what you do for us.
I'm Deanne Morgan. I'm working with Rosemary in the mapping program. Just doing some digitizing and then starting to learn some of the GEMS stuff. So we'll be helping with some of that.
GEMS is the system that federal system that we're transitioning to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a schema that the USGS is requiring maps to be submitted in now.
Fantastic.
Welcome both.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a couple of other online ones. We have two new, let's see, hang on. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anybody. Pull this up on my list. So, yeah, you can. Okay, Holly Brown. Make sure you don't forget anybody. So I'll talk a little bit of this in a minute, but well, I'll just tell you now. Holly, she is the public information officer for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. And in some of looking at how we run our organization, they thought maybe we could benefit from Holly's experience. Mark Milligan's been doing a great job, but he's also a program manager for geologic information outreach. And so we've been borrowing on Holly over the last couple of months to be our PIO. So we're sharing her with OGM, which has been really great. So you want to say something, Holly? Say hello.
I would just like to say good morning. Hopefully I'll get to meet everyone in person one of these days. But yeah, look forward to meeting everyone. And so far I'm really enjoying working with the Utah Geological Survey. They do really cool things, so.
There you go. I just turned off my share. So that's Holly. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
But Holly's been great. She jumped in and she got involved immediately in a grammar request from SUA that I'll talk to you about later. And that was one of her first forays into what we're doing. So she's been a good help. We also had the governor appointed 2 board members, but not yet ratified or confirmed by the state Senate. That won't probably happen till, we're hoping in September, but I can't promise anything that's out of my control. So let's start with Becky Hammond. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Becky?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Becky Hammond, and I'm a geologist. I have bachelor's and master's degrees from BYU. Actually went to school with Bill. Long time ago. Yeah, so then I worked for both the Forest Service and the BLM for 31 years, and in Utah and Arizona. And then I retired 3 years ago, and Pete convinced me to apply for a position with the board. So here I am, and I really look forward to getting involved in geology again and working with the Utah Geological Survey.
Thank you.
So, welcome aboard, Becky. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
So, and Riley Brinkerhoff.
So I'm Riley Brinkerhoff. I'm up in North Dakota, so I'll see you guys in person in the next one, but glad to join you. Born and raised in Utah, currently work for a small oil and gas outfit out of Provo called Wasatch Energy, drilling Uinta Basin. Went to the 3 major schools in Utah, got degrees from BYU and University of Utah. So a good mix of everything, or a bad mix, kind of depending on your point of view. And I'm glad to work with you.
And Riley, he was a student of mine.
Wow.
So, anyway,
Thank you, Riley.
thank you. Good to have Riley on board. And so they were appointed to replace Riley, to replace Mark Eccles for oil and gas representation, and Becky to take the responsibility that Pete had.
It's an upgrade in my case.
Does that mean you were, no, I won't say that. It's sliding downhill, but
No, I'm happy to have Riley.
yeah, we're glad to have them both. Trying to think, we'll have 2 from the bookstore walking a little later. We had both our manager and our assistant manager resigned over the last few months. And so we got one on board last week, the new bookstore manager, and the assistant manager starting this morning. So they both, but they don't usually get here about 9:30. So they were going to walk over around then. So we'll just welcome them in when they come in. So anyway, have I forgotten anybody? Let me go look at my slides, see who I've forgotten. Start sharing my slide again. Okay, share window.
Kayla Smith.
Kayla, thank you. I had a list there. Okay.
Brooklyn.
Where are they? Thought I had them all in here. Oh, there we go. Kayla Smith, and she's in the field today. So I knew she wouldn't be attending.
Good for her.
And Brooke, and you may have met before. She was in hazards before, and she moved over to mapping. I wasn't sure. So we'll hear from Jackson and Tori a little bit later. I'll come back. Let's see what else. Gordon Douglas retired. That he kind of surprised us in May. Says, hey, I'm retiring June 1st. Oh, okay. He was our GIS manager. We'll talk a bit about that in a few minutes. We got Peter Nielsen, who ran the Core Center, has accepted a position kind of on what they call a career mobility assignment to go work on coal mine fires and stuff over in Division of Oil, Gas and Mining. And Anna Farb, who was one of our temporary GIS analysts in the editorial group, she got a degree in landscape architecture and was able to get a job in Nevada doing landscape architecture as a GIS analyst.
Good for her.
So she's chasing what she wanted to go do.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to go back up a couple of slides. Just in general, these are in the notes. And so just for people watching online, if you're watching, all the board members get a packet of the materials. It's public material, that has most of these comments in them. But we continue to work on COVID-19. We have people that had someone came down recently and got it, and they're at home doing the right thing. We have strongly encouraged our staff, and I don't think you'd find anyone that would say that we have not tried to protect our staff, and it's interesting, it serves them well, it serves us well, and everyone seems to be happy with the way we're handling it. We don't have a mask mandate, but the governor won't allow anyone to do a mask, so we don't have that, but there's quite a few people you see walking around wearing masks. We've encouraged, no one's going to bother you if you're wearing a mask. We don't care. I always tell people for safety, the number one person responsible for you being well and safe and healthy is you. And if I ever ask you to do something you think is unsafe, don't do it. Follow your own guidelines there. So we've got a bunch of people, when we came out of, last time we talked about, we were working on a plan and bringing people back to work. And so with the governor, he put out 2 programs, one called Utah Works, which means you're going to work 3 days or more a week from home. And that went into effect on June 1st. The other was called DNR Works or Telework, which was 2 days or less from home in a week. So we went through all of our employees and tried to figure out who was doing what and when and where. And what we came up with, and these are some slides that I shared back in June with our staff, that about 40 people signed up for telework, which means 2 days or less from home. And about 13 Utah, that's changed a little bit. These slides are from June. I know we've had a couple of people move around, flex a little bit. And 16 people saying, I'm going to be in the office full time. So that's a change. You think about that from a year ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's a changing world. You know, I wrote an article for our survey notes, and my first line, the times they are a-changing. Anybody remember that song?
Absolutely.
How many of you old enough?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, from Bob Dylan. So they are a-changing, and this is part of that change that's happening. In terms of days a week of when people are in the office, the blue columns are the ones, or the amount of people in the office on any given day.
Where does field time, is it considered home?
What time?
How are you accounting for field time in this? Is it home or office?
Well, I'm not accounting for it. It's just part of their job,
Okay.
you know. But if they're, if you're going to be in the field 3 days this week, it doesn't really matter. This is just what they chose as
Yeah,
their.
okay.
One thing we put in place was we said, let's designate a couple of core days. So we designated Monday and Tuesdays, and so try and have as many people in the office as we could.
So this is the format they chose. This is the
Yes.
summary of the format they
Yeah.
chose, and it doesn't reflect any of their, where they are at any one time.
No. So they can be in the office on a Monday. They could be in the office on a Monday as their office day, but if they're in the field, they're still in the field.
Right, sure.
Yeah. So, but that's the intent of what we're trying to do. And you know, the way the governor put this out to us is this is not a right, but we tried to accommodate as many people as we could. Our bookstore people, they can't work from home. Our core center people, really tough to work from home. You know, for Jodi and I, and Mike does some days, but Mike ends up being here probably more days than he originally envisioned, you know. And we have about 4 employees in our data services group. We'll talk about that are all working from home. But it's working so far. And that's the good thing. I went through those. We still have some positions to fill that we're working on. GIS manager, we had, I think, 36 applicants to replace Gordon. And I'll talk about what we're going to do with that in a few moments. The core center curator replaced Peter. The applications closed Sunday night. We had 82 applicants. I hear a lot about all these help wanted signs and all these businesses, and we have other divisions in DNR that are having a hard time staffing, but we're not one of them. Geologists want to come here. And then the position that Anna Farr is leaving, we have that position is open and accepting applications at this time.
Will the core center job be a geologist?
Yes.
Okay.
And the last one was, that's
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful.
and we may move it from what we call a geologist, which is our entry level, to a project geologist, right? Yeah, okay. So that's our goal, is to upgrade that a little bit there. And we have some big ideas, you know, Mike's got some things he'd like that person to do. We've been inundated with core. During the downturn of the pandemic, the number of companies that left Utah donated core to us. The Oklahoma found they had a bunch of Utah core. They put it on a couple of semis and sent it to us. And so rock is coming. EGI is talking about donating more the rest of their core. Energy and Geoscience Institute. So we need the help.
Question, so when you receive a semi-full of core, is it generally in pretty good shape? I mean, is it reasonably boxed and properly cataloged? And
It varies.
Or does it come in a dump truck?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't come in, generally, most time it's pretty well boxed,
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say it's well cataloged.
yeah. And so how do you handle it when it's not?
We have to go through and read the labels on every box and create a spreadsheet.
Wow. A lot of work for the DA.
It's a lot of work.
Yes,
And so it's caused a lot of backup.
yeah.
We're going to do a little tour. What's not on the agenda, Mike Vandenberg will be here right near the end of our meeting. And since we're here, we thought some people told me they'd never been in our core center. So we're going to do a quick tour of the core center and we'll probably go back and see the mega block. So Mike, you can ask any question you want. We'll show you the new lighting and the new shelves that you guys approved. So take a look at that as well.
Bill, can I ask you just real quick also, do you have room for all that core or are we out of room for the new core you're receiving?
We are out of room.
There's more room for shelves, I noticed.
Overhead?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can put some more overhead shelving on, and we may do that. There is a warehouse up in
Clearfield.
Yeah, Clearfield.
Clearfield. I'll make sure I get there's a center field down by Gunnison that I always confuse for whatever reason. But Clearfield, but Mike Vandenberg told me that we don't have any space at the moment, but we've got a bunch of core up there. What we were trying to do was pull some of the core off the shelf that does not frequently accessed. We can move it up there. And then if someone asks for it, we can go get it and bring it back. But yeah, we're out of space, Riley. Good question. Yeah, Mike Vandenberg would love to see us get like a $2 or $3 million building block and build a big expansion to this.
I noticed that went away for the upcoming, in the discussion of what's going on in the legislature. You're not going to try and do that again now?
I haven't asked the legislature directly for that money.
Yeah.
There are other things that we will. We're going to work on that tomorrow as a group, exactly what our building blocks, but we'll talk about a few of those. We would love to. It's just hard to get. Go ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say, just at the department level, we don't get support for like expanding into this parking lot area. They want to keep that.
If you've been here in the winter, there's boats and trailers and trucks all stored out here.
Well, there's a lot of that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not nearly as much as there. So anyway,
That's, frankly, that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
Just commenting.
no,
And when I'm not
you would
on the board
have,
anymore, I can say it more loudly to more people. But it's, I mean, you already have this huge facility and adding to it makes much more sense, and having them go park their stuff that isn't gonna get used all winter in a rental lot someplace is way cheaper and easier to do.
yeah, and we've had that discussion. I would just, I agree with you. But I have to work within my constraints on my end. The other thing is getting the legislature to kick out,
Well, the
$1
reason
million
I ask is
building
because there's a
projects.
lot of extra money laying around right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never easier to get money than when there is money.
Yeah.
And
So we can talk about it. I'm happy to have that discussion. So the board trip is still on, I think. No one's told me no yet. I've got it right after our break. Tyler Knudsen will come on and give us an overview. He's got some slides that he'll share with you about some ideas. So I'm just teasing it here. One thing I'm going to try and do, I haven't set it up, but I want to call Bill, what's his last name? Guy out of Vegas. Have you heard about the Mineral Museum in Milford?
Yeah.
Have you been to it?
I've been to it. Yeah, the UGA had a stop there on a tour down there.
I've been there a couple of
It's amazing.
times.
Absolutely amazing.
It's a privately owned
Yeah.
mineral museum that's just, I mean, that one picture there, you can see those display cases. There's 2 stories of that in an old school.
Is it owned by Ray?
Yes.
Oh, Ray, that's who it
Bill
is.
Ray.
Bill Ray, yeah. So I've got to reach out through a contact I haven't seen or see to see if it can even be done. But I will reach out and ask if we can include it. I think you guys would, if you've not been there, it's a pretty amazing facility. Yeah. I mean, he's got gold nugget like that big and a platinum one that's the same size in there. It's pretty amazing. Okay. And I have my fingers crossed still. We have all the rooms reserved. So I think we can accommodate everybody. That was a good thing because they're all booked now. We checked. So thank you to Cheryl for getting that done. So jumping into any questions before I move on to talk about specific programs? Okay. Energy and minerals, kind of not a lot has changed there. I'll talk about the grammar request here in a moment for them, but still a lot of interest in geothermal. We're getting more, as you saw in the projects, we're getting involved in more geothermal projects. Critical minerals continue to be a focus. Interestingly, at the federal level, the list of critical minerals is changing. It's a fairly dynamic list. Some things are dropping off and others are dropping on. Carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration we may be getting involved in a project down in central Utah for that, or southern Utah, down by Cedar City. But there is interest. There's also interest in hydrogen. And so anyway, and I've already mentioned Minerals Group working on Gold Hill. We've been out in the field mapping on that. Our minerals geologist, Stephanie Mills, is back from her family leave. She had a girl, right? Yeah, it was a girl. First one was a boy, Oscar. I don't remember the girl's name. But anyway, she's back and working for it back in the office. So that's great. Glad to have her back. We had a grammar request that came in late July. And these things are like, I don't know, a fire drill of some sort. You're running hard. They send this letter and they want, and I'll show you a picture of it here in a minute, but this was related to some work that Mike Vandenberg, last fall, we started getting questions after the election in November, there started to be people wondering what would happen, what would be the effect if the federal government would put a ban on leasing, drilling, fracking on federal lands in Utah. Wyoming had put out a report that drew a lot of attention. And so we got asked to do something similar. So Mike Vandenberg put together a document that we kind of finished up near the end of December. And then in January, when the new president came in on his first day, he issued an executive order. And he banned, basically, he put a halt, a pause, I think that's the right word, on leasing and also for fracking and drilling on federal lands.
He put a pause on permitting any activities on existing oil and gas leases. So if you had an oil and gas lease and you had a permit to drill,
Right.
then you had a permit to continue to operate on that lease. And if you didn't have a permit, an APD approved application for permit to drill, then you had to wait until it expired.
Right.
And that part of it, I think, was thrown out by a federal judge.
Yeah, later.
Yes. Yeah.
So once that order came out, we started getting requests. And so that's when we shared our document, went to the governor's office, and there's articles in the Trib about, them listening to industry and not us or whatever, or whoever. But SUA, a lot of material has already been recovered through SUA requests to OED, Office of Energy Development, and to a few other places. None had come to us at that time. And so there was an article in late May that came out. And so this SUA request here was really focusing on emails between Mike Vandenberg, myself, any documents, and any emails we had between industry and other people and state agencies. So I zipped through all my emails. They gave us a bunch of search terms to look through. If you want to see the document, I can share it. But
one other comment I'll make is that they weren't very well organized when they did this on the first day of the Biden administration.
No.
And they applied it to Indian reservations, and the federal government has a trust responsibility to Indian tribes. And they were totally out of line by doing that. And Mook Duncan, the then chairman of the Ute tribe, sent a really, really good 2-page letter to Biden, actually to the assistant secretary, the acting secretary of Interior at the time, and told him you can't you got to trust responsibility to us. You got to put us ahead of whatever your other plans are. And within 24 hours of receipt, they realized that they had really messed up and they backed away from that.
And then you said later, some parts were struck down in
That's
the
right.
courts. And so bottom line though is, you know, the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, they're trying to fill gaps between the story that came out. But wasn't it Brian that wrote that?
Yeah.
Marfley?
Mathley, yeah.
Mathley, yeah. I think he's the one who wrote it. And now, and so we gave them, this is the report, you know, and Mike, it was interesting. Mike basically said, it's not, in the short term, there's not going to be much of an effect in Utah because there's already permits on file, ready to go. So if they want to do something, they can. So that was the bottom line.
I don't agree with that.
But
that's not, I mean,
yeah,
this is that we get our money from mineral lease funds on a continuous basis. And so if there's a gap in activity here that's caused by that, then somewhere down the road, we're going to have a shortfall that's caused by that suspension.
Yeah.
I don't see any other way of looking at it.
And the suspension could be just fear driven, you know, I'm not going to go drill. Now, what we are finding is it's in the year that's passed, or nearly a year, production is when prices went back up.
Well, the prices that went back up that have affected your mineral lease revenue are natural gas prices.
Yeah.
You hardly get any mineral lease money from oil anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And all of the oil drilling that's going on in the state of Utah is on private and Indian land. So you're not getting any mineral lease money from that in the future.
No.
But the you know, natural gas was $1.80 in December and it's $4.06 today. So that's where a lot of that's coming from.
Yeah. So we'll see how this affects. Bottom line is we piled it all up as a bunch of PDF files, all of our emails, and we emailed it to their attorney. And we haven't heard back since. The crazy thing is they give you 10 days. And so you got 10 days to do it. If you need longer, you can always reply back and say, no, we need longer. But we got it done in the 10 days that they asked for it.
Good.
And there was the letter that we sent out. It says, who was it? Landon Newell. He's their attorney, or one of them. But we sent all your material, and if anything else, let us know. So that was a sewer request. Hazards, a lot been going on there. They continue to be get these maps published, you know, of hazards. They're working on new ones. I know they've been down working in my part in Sevier County on the Sevier Valley Fault, which I say is good because one of the 5 biggest earthquakes in Utah's history was down there in Elsinore, early 1900s. And my house is not that far. So anyway, and I didn't tell them to go down. They're working on that on their own. They've also been called out. Zion National Park in particular reaches out to us to help them when they had the rock fall before. I think I showed you the video. And so after this last big flooding and debris flows down there, we've been down there several times. And we get special permission to fly it with the drone. Because with the drone, we can image the elevation changes. We can compare that with LiDAR data, and we get the volumetrics on that. And we'll hear more about that a little later, about this episode from Jessica Castleton, and I think Ben Erickson is going to join us remotely. And we're still working on the radon study that the House Bill 45 asked us to do. Groundwater in wetlands is just, hey, you missed my talk about hazards.
I got one question before that. You
Yes.
talked here about the legislature and House Bill 45 tasked the DNR with generating a report that recommends ways to increase public awareness about the risks of radon and ways to mitigate residents' exposure to radon. Final report is to be provided during or before the first interim meeting of 2022. I noticed elsewhere that you're working on an update of putting down roots in earthquake country. And when I was reading through this last night, it dawned on me that you might be able to put a radon section in that, which will presumably be both published and on the internet, and have it all in one. I mean, it's all about hazards for people's homes. And I don't know, but I'm just saying maybe it'd be worth taking a look at putting the radon together with putting down roots to have it distributed kind of simultaneously and automatically.
Okay. Well, you've got Steve Bowman sitting back there. He's our program manager for hazards.
it's a great suggestion. You know, we're adding quite a bit of material to roots already.
Yeah.
And so anytime that we add something, we have to add 4 pages just the way. Because you take a 11 by 17 paper, and then you have 4 8.5 by 11. And so just match everything up. It's a little tricky sometimes, but definitely consider that.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks.
So we're working on that with the Division of Emergency Management, I believe, and the Seismic Safety Commission, right?
That's
Okay, good. And this radon thing, Steve, are you still hoping to have the final report actually done this year?
I'm hoping we could have the final report ready for the legislature in early 2022.
So we'll get it out early.
And that way any comments they have can get addressed early.
And we've reached out to DEQ, or Division of Environmental Quality, and they have a radon person over there. And she's asked to be engaged as well, so we'll engage her. So we'll reach across agencies. Because these are some areas, and this is a big push for the governor. Are there areas that we can speak with one voice? Rather than multiple voices into agencies. So wherever possible, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure we're reaching out. That's why I mentioned Division of Emergency Management and Seismic Safety Committee. Can we reduce duplicity and speak with one voice? After that last earthquake, the state asked us to put together the earthquakes.utah.gov webpage, which they did in lickety-split time, so they could have a central clearinghouse, because that information was so scattered. And so there's a central warehouse on that now.
It's interesting. We're planning to downsize our house situation pretty soon. And so we've been looking at houses in Summit County and in Wasatch County. And about half of them have active radon
Mitigation.
evacuation systems installed.
I had a home in Colorado.
Yeah.
Had a little pump sitting in the basement.
Yep.
Sat there and whirred away 24/7. So.
You have the 4 people carry your limit, which is the EPA action limit. There's no low hazard in Utah. It's all moderate high. The 4 people carry per year action limit is actually based on some very old data that's incomplete. It's not been updated. It really should be 2.7. And if you go by that value, pretty much everywhere in Utah is high.
Yeah. Lung cancer is a top leading cause of death, one of the top leading causes of death in Utah, right?
It is. It's about 94% of all the deaths from natural hazards. And unfortunately, the
Radon
rate goes back to 1973. So if you projected it back, it would probably push that value up into 90% of the deaths.
So it's a real hazard.
Radon death manifests itself as lung cancer?
It does.
Okay.
So anyway, something we're taking seriously. Okay.
Excuse me, one other question.
You bet.
So if it manifests itself as lung cancer, can it clearly be diagnosed as the cause of that lung cancer?
It's done through a statistical measure. Essentially, if someone has lung cancer and has never smoked or had occupational exposure to chemicals that cause lung cancer, most likely it's from radon. But it's very difficult to near impossible to definitively say, yes, this person's lung cancer is due to radon.
Okay, and then one other final question, is any of that age related? I mean, surely somebody in their 80s that die of that lung cancer that has never smoked or.
It's generally older people that get the lung cancer because it does take time
Yeah.
to build up.
Because in the uranium days, back in the uranium days when booming in the 50s, there was a lot of exposure to radon under.
Exactly.
And typically those workers were predicted to die in their late 40s and early 50s. And I think that came to fruition.
Or anywhere where you have uranium stockpiles, you can have a lot of radon gas come on.
Thank you.
And travel down slow.
Thank you.
So
I have a
quick
question.
Go ahead.
You showed a picture on the proposed field trip of the fractures in Enoch, the subsidence fractures.
Yeah, they're all filled in.
Well, I wonder, is Is it possible that the recent flooding they had there is somehow aggravated by the subsidence trough that exists there now?
Most likely, the answer to that is yes. We don't have recent precision survey data to definitively say yes, but we saw the same thing out at Barrel Enterprise back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Same thing in other areas.
So to that end, I was actually there Monday afternoon. I went out there and walked through Enoch and the subsidence fractures. We had a fissure open up late last week, a sinkhole in one of the fissures due to the flooding.
Oh.
So, yeah. And we've got some good pictures. I haven't even downloaded it yet, but I flew my drone over some of those fissures and how long. I mean, there's 4 feet of displacement in some of them now.
Wow.
So
We've got.
I would have got them up, but I haven't even got them off of my card yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there.
No, it's aggravated. So we'll take a closer look. I was out there with Tyler and my boss, Brian Steed, on Monday afternoon. Well, but the flooding damage is it's amazing. But yeah, it's being funneled in that bowl.
Okay.
Good question? No. Groundwater. This is probably our group that is probably, all of our groups are feeling pressure. I'm not trying to minimize, but groundwater is really, and they get a lot of their funding is at 75%. You know, a lot of their EPA work. But internally in the state, because of the drought conditions, the state's wanting to know more about the role of groundwater and how it's going to be affected by drought. We actually, this is going to sound silly, but we had some community leaders in Utah saying, well, we use well water, so we don't have to worry about the drought and conservation. Now, any of you know anything about groundwater know that groundwater becomes groundwater when it was first surface water. And so we actually had to put together some documents so that we could be shared around legislators and some community leaders that didn't quite understand that relationship. But to that end, you know, water rights and water resources are leaning on our groundwater folks, Hugh and his team, and our wetlands folks to do a lot of work. And we are at capacity when it comes to people to do that kind of work.
I would just like to make the comment that I think the UGS work on groundwater in the past has been phenomenal and professional and really industry-wise was very respected.
And directly supported by the legislature.
Yeah.
And so
Very
another
good.
reason to go see them.
Yeah, we will. And you'll see us, so one of bottom of my slides, this is going to be a focus area for building block this year.
Yeah.
This is one. We've added some staff, you know, in the last 15 months. We're looking to hire, I approved yesterday making an offer to a tech to come on board to help us. It's
So what's your head count now?
in groundwater,
No, in the whole.
about
organization.
70.
So you're still 10 short of the people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I sat down, when we talk about building, I can say this here, but when we talked about building blocks, I pulled all the program managers together and I said, okay, think big. What is it you want to get done? It's not getting done. And they came up with a list and it's like 1.4 million. Now, I'm not going to probably get 1.4 million, but I have found that it.
They asked for 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I can say this in a public meeting here, because I believe it's true for anywhere, is that my very first session, because I was on the job, 2 weeks when I went to the
I
legislature.
remember that.
And we were fighting we got $40,000 to help fund our data manager position. And that was it. No, 100,000, but the Gombe had approved 60 and we got the legislature to do 100. And I realized that we're not asking for nearly enough. There are needs out there and we need to ask for them. They need to be aware and they can say no. But then I throw it and then it's theirs. It's not me. And so.
One of the things that I think we've learned from late 2014 when the price of oil collapsed and we had a travel ban and a hiring ban and all kinds of other things. And even through last year, through the special sessions, and Alyssa, you can disagree with me if you do, but one of the things I learned is that we've got friends in the legislature that we don't even know we have. And people who I never would have thought were, I won't mention any names, but people who I never would have thought cared about the Utah Geological Survey made it really clear that they did care about it and that they were willing to vote for money to supplement the money we'd lost. And those people are still there.
They are.
And their attitude hasn't changed. And between the earthquake and water issues and all the other things that are going on,
Population growth
I
is,
think we have a wonderful
taxing
opportunity to latch on to permanent financing that doesn't ride up and down with this price of some commodity.
We're working on that.
I understand.
I mean, I experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of friends, and the reputation preceded a lot of our conversations with the
So,
legislators. So, I mean, I would definitely ask. I mean, I
So-
like the thought of asking for.
In
what
May,
need
you
and
and I,
more.
in May,
Okay.
you and I basically called every legislator who was on an appropriations committee in the House or the Senate or joint. And, you know, we talked to everyone.
so here's a point that I'm going to say as a director, that as a board, that kind of help is huge. We appreciate those efforts, that you'll pick up that phone and call those people. And so those of you that did it, that was huge. And in the end, and I've said this, maybe I said it in previous meetings, but we went into that special session last June in a really crazy time. It's in the slides later, but I'm going to say it now. But we were asked to consider 2%, 5%, and 10% cuts
And we had two $400,000 building blocks
that might have been
that were
gone.
at risk.
Yeah. And so we were looking at losing our building blocks and losing
Up to 10%.
10% of the budget and the loss in mineral lease,
Mhm.
which would have looked like, but close to $1.5 to $2 million would have been an impact on the UGS. That was way more than the 2, 5, or 10 that they were. And when we came out of it, we lost $5,000 of out-of-state travel. That's not the exact, but it's close, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like getting a ticket from a state trooper for a windshield crack
Yeah.
when you're caught going 100 miles an hour.
Exactly. So it is. That's a good way to put it, Mike. But so your efforts really made a difference in keeping all of our folks working and meeting the needs for the state.
So I would say if you feel like that would be supportive again, that is something that we can do again,
Okay.
especially if we're asking for more,
Okay.
because we might negotiate down. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, we're going to sit down,
Think of
the
the
three of us
strategy.
here, and work through this tomorrow. But we have it all. I've got it all in it. Like I said, I wanted to take everybody's input. And so we've got that. We're working through that now.
Well, you're maxed out in water, you're maxed out in mapping. I mean, it's
We're
just
maxed out in energy and minerals.
energy. and minerals.
hazards.
Yeah.
Hazard,
I mean, it's
Steve,
just-
Steve says he's down 3 people. 4? Yeah.
Yeah,
We're beyond maxed out.
We're beyond.
Yeah.
We're running hard.
yeah, we're actually at risk, and this is a good way to sell it. We're at risk of not being able to take advantage of outside money because we don't have enough matching money, basically, or enough people to do the work.
We're already
Yep.
there.
I know.
We're there.
Yeah.
We've got 2 geologists and hazards working.
Yeah.
Because there's just such a volume of it.
Well, and the big bump in money right away, yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Yeah. So, but groundwater is feeling a lot of pressure, and we're trying to engage some pretty new technologies like these eddy covariance flux towers, which is basically a weather station that measures evaporation and transpiration, which is what comes off of plants. So we can better understand how that interaction. So there's a network on it. We bought one to put out on the Bonneville salt flats, and I'll talk about that project here in a moment. We've also working on in like Moab area and the Matheson wetlands, and there's a lot of work going on in the Great Salt Lake. Interesting at the Great Salt Lake, during the last legislature, it was proposed to send $750,000 of funding to the USGS to do groundwater related work on the Great Salt Lake. And I wrote a note to that particular representative saying, hey, wait a minute. There's the USGS and the UGS, and I said, we could do, not all of it, we could do a lot of this work. And I got a note back, says, yes, we agree. That's good. We want it to all go to the USGS. So I'm not sure I got But, so then we thought, should we fight this? Because the money got funneled through me and I had to go give the check to the USGS. But in sitting down with our wetlands folks and working with the USGS wetlands folks, they and the representative, they've realized who we are. Even though we didn't fight that one, and they want to send additional money now.
You
And
should
I've
have
asked
just
us to
crossed
spec-
out the extra S and put it in the bank.
We should have. Well, it was in our account, right, Jodi? It was there.
We just don't have people to do it.
So anyway, my point is that, again, the work is getting recognized for what these folks do. And by trying to work with some of these, I think we're going to start to see a benefit as some of that comes down the road. So this will be a big building block focus for us this year. I mentioned this in our last meeting in April that we had just signed off. And so this slide is from April meeting. So it's not a typo what you're seeing where they're signed off late last week, April. We signed off on it in April, but these are the ones we were told that there might be a grammar request coming on this. Well, it turns out they didn't send us a grammar request. They skipped grammar, went straight to subpoena. And we got subpoenaed on this. And so we were able, through the Attorney General's office, to negotiate the delivery to the litigants, which is the folks at Bryce Canyon City.
Which, just as a point of interest, is Ruby's Inn.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah. But there's a lot of demand to do development. And I know Sitla's engaged there and the feds, at different levels are people want to put in some big hotels. And so there's big questions about water quality. If we put a big septic tank or something down there on these hotels, believe it or not, how close can we put septic tanks? So we did several studies in that regard. And on Monday, Janae, who's our senior geoscientist on this, senior scientist, she was deposed for 4.5 hours by the attorneys. So a long day. We've never had to answer questions from attorneys. Some of you have done this. So anyway, we complied with the subpoena. We worked at the Attorney General's office to get every piece of material. The big thing we did is we insisted before we release it, we did not want to release preliminary versions until everything had been at least reviewed by other peers internally and gone through our process. We believe that we have a great editorial group, and a lot of our staff complain about how onerous it is to get a document out. But on the other hand, the documents that get out are good because they've been reviewed. They've been reviewed by peers in the program, then they get reviewed by a technical writer for quality, and then it goes to Mike Hylland, most amazing editor I've worked with. And then it goes to me. And so it goes through a lot of people. And so they were willing to wait, and they worked with us. Those that were asking for the information were patient to allow us to do it in the time frame that we wanted. So that was good. And the other things that groundwater is getting involved in, I may have mentioned this before, but about 2 years ago, Senator or Representative Handy proposed a bill that if the state put up $5 million, you may remember this, the feds would put up $45 million via the BLM to significantly enhance the laydown of salt on the Bonneville salt flats. Well, the $45 million never came. And the $5 million was tied, could only be spent if the $45 million came. I keep turning that down. It's not gone up. I put it to 0. Anyway, and so after a year, they reduced that money from $5 million to $1 million. But they took some of we didn't have to have matching money anymore. So we were able to do it. So we've put forth a plan because everyone's saying nothing's getting done, nothing's getting done, nothing's getting done. And so we decided to just kind of, as the UGS, take the lead out on this and see if anybody follows. Because everyone's pointing fingers at somebody. Why isn't that federal money there? Because the feds, their lobbyists are telling that the money's been appropriated by the feds when it has.
Probably in the infrastructure bill.
Well, no, but I'm saying previously. Yeah, I don't even want to go on that one.
Plenty of money in infrastructure.
So So everybody, so we actually ended up, so we put out a plan and it circulated and we got all together last week. And we all agreed we're gonna, I think I've got it here. We had $1 million. The BLM did come up with 125,000. It wasn't 45 million.
They gotta buy lunch.
Yeah. So they put that in there. So we put together a plan and Hugh was a big effort in leading this and his team. So for this next year, we're going to work with the University of Utah, Brenda Bowen and some of her students, Jeremiah Burton. He's the lead. He's finishing up his doctorate and he'll be doing a postdoc, and we're going to help fund that. And
Is
we've already,
Intrepid's expenditure 500,000 in cash, or is that in kind?
we're going to give them 500,000
You're gonna give them 500, okay.
to do salt lake. They're going to enhance the amount of salt brine
Okay, yeah.
they lay down over and above. They are obligated by contract, because they have mining leases on the salt flats, that when they take salt out, they have to put a certain amount back. So we're going to try and get them to lay an extra amount out, and we can monitor where this even works. We think it's tied in big way to groundwater, but that's not well understood yet. So we're going to take on the groundwater study with our staff, the University of Utah staff. And so we put together this project, and you'll see it's not all spent. Part of that's sold over the next couple of years as things change. And as we learn, we may say we need this, or we need to do that, or we need whatever. We leave it some buffer there. So that's what we put in. So everybody jumped on board on this. It's like, wow, we're afraid someone might yell at us. Hard part was we haven't got it done yet, but I think we've got to figure out is how to go through purchasing at the state on a deal that big of 500,000, and that the accounting at Intrepid can take it. So I've had discussions with their controller who says, you can't do this, we can't do that. It was an interesting discussion. So I think we've got to figure it out. And we're going to put together, we have another meeting this afternoon.
So is this a no bid contract?
Yes, it will be. And
It'll be in
The
the
problem I
paper.
got.
they call it a sole.
Oh, I had one with Sitla.
Yeah.
You know,
They're hard to do, but in this case, purchasing said, why can't we have contracts with Morton? Can we just get them to fill up their dump trucks with salt and go out and lay it on the salt flats? No, it doesn't work that way. And so purchase says, put together your whole plan. Usually the paragraph, the justification is usually 2 or 3 sentences. I have 2 pages of justification. And someone says, shouldn't that be shorter? But Priest says, make it 5 pages if you have to. But make it clear. And the clear reason is Intrepid has the leases on the salt flats. They have the canals on the salt flats. They have the ability to generate brine, not salt, that needs to be flowed out there.
yeah, we toured a whole bunch of that.
No, you did.
Board, yeah.
Right. But that's why it has to be a sole source project.
Were you at Race Week last week? Wasn't that last week?
It's this week.
It's this week. It's going on right now.
It started on Friday, the racing and their lobbyists were in town.
That's what.
So I had a meeting with them and the BLM and Intrepid. We all sat in one room together and sorted this out. I went out a year ago to the day to the salt flats, and that's where these 2 pictures out there came from when I was out up there on race day, or race week, because I wanted to talk to the racers. I wanted to see what the irony in all this is that the racers told me then, a year ago, the salt's the best we've ever seen.
Really
Best in years. Huh?
Really interesting. So is that because they don't know what the total depth of it
The
is?
thickness is that they don't know how thick it is. And the pan is getting smaller. And so last night on the news, anybody watch the news last night? On Fox, did you see that article?
Yeah.
This is the best salt we've seen.
Yeah.
So 2 years in a row.
Oh, wow.
Because when we were out there, it was so wet. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
When we
Oh,
were
yeah.
Intrepid,
Well, it does that every spring.
Yeah, but
In
I
a
mean,
good year.
but even then, it was an excessively wet
Right.
spring.
Yeah.
So when it dries, then I'm sure the wind effect on it gets pretty pronounced.
Yeah. And so one of the things we're looking at is the scientists believe that the better evaporation plays a big role in salt precipitation.
Yeah.
So how saturated is the brine? Are we laying it down at the right time of year? Because we're laying down in the winter because that's when Intrepid can do it. We may find this better laid down in the summer. So over the next 2 or 3 years,
Evaporates rapidly.
evaporates rapidly and precipitates more.
Well, and they're saying this after a couple of years where they didn't have any races because conditions are so bad.
Yeah.
They moved to an area in Nevada, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, the races are willing to work on this. You know, we talked last week, do we need to go to an on-off situation where they do every other year or something to give the flats? So there's a lot on the table and a lot of people are working on it.
So while
So we're
they're
going to be part of
racing,
that.
while they're racing, does it have a negative impact on it? You wouldn't think it would it? Or does it make it more dusty and break up the?
This is me.
Because you
speaking.
said maybe the answer is to let it lay for a year and then.
Well, part of the process of getting ready to race is prepping the salt flats.
Oh.
So if you look at this picture here at the top,
Uh-huh.
this is salt flats, and the salt is growing and you know, it starts to precip, it's all rough. When they race it, they groom a lot of it.
I see.
They'll flatten it, they'll scrape it, they'll make it.
Okay.
And so you can get both kinds of salt out here. And so they've got to find a way, is the preparation affecting the precipitation of salt,
Yeah.
which may or may not be true. We don't know that.
Racing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move on from groundwater. So mapping, these are mostly the same slides that we got before. We've updated some of the numbers. Last year, state map, which is our funding from the USGS to map in the state, it's the funding source there. We got a little over $500,000 in the total, which means we had to match it at 50%. So it's a little over $1 million project. That was huge for us. That was really big. And it really stressed us to get to there. We borrowed, this is where hazards and mapping or energy and minerals, even groundwater folks are pitching in to help meet the dollar. Man, but I can't take all of this money unless I have the match for it. And this is when we talk about budget requests. We've hired, Deanne was brought on board and Brennan to help with this project. And Brooklyn Smout, who came over from hazards, 3 of them went over into mapping to help get this project done. And that's this year's project, okay? So for fiscal year 22, they've upped that amount to $574,000. See, more than we, so thinking about feeling stressed last year, I got program managers screaming at me now that you're taking my staff away. But it's where we're able to find the talent. If we can find some money, you know, in the legislature through building blocks, we can get a lot of this done. The couple of points to think about, the USGS is making a bit of a shift in how they want to fund. Rather than just new mapping of geology, they're also funding this digital transformation. How do we get into this GEMS schema for database storage and map? Can we convert old maps into the new schema? The USGS has a goal of making a 3D map of the entire country, a couple of levels. And so they're spending a lot of their funding. It's interesting, the state geologic map, and anybody worked across state boundaries on geology? The
They
geology
don't
maps
usually change at the state line.
Yeah, the geology changes at the state line. How did that happen? You know, and it shouldn't. And so some of the funding is going to go towards basically resolving those differences. How do we make those maps tie so we can get to this 3D? So that's where that funding is changing, and it's driving getting more GIS people. And how do we convert and do that kind of stuff? So as Grant put it, he goes, I would have liked, we got a bigger portion for that side than the field mapping side. He would like to see that flipped. He's an old school mapper. He does not want to go, he wants to go out in the field and map rocks. Yeah. Bob Beeks in southern Utah right now, mapping. So again, this requires, we got to get staff trained as these changes are occurring. You know, we'll talk about some changes we're making internally to our organization to help facilitate this. But there's new procedures. It's just a lot going on, as we start to face this change that's coming down the road. And we're faced with a choice. Do we want to turn away from their money, or do we want to keep using it? If we want to keep using federal money, we're going to have to go down this path. Like you said, a lot of challenges. We've already talked about all this stuff here. Paleontology, they just continue to run along. They're part of our mapping program. That's why that slide's here. We got enough due donations after some of the articles that got put out earlier this year, that I think we now have enough funding to keep Scott Madsen going for another year. He's the guy doing the prep work on the mega block, and we'll show that to you here a little later today. GIO, again, some big changes here, and I've got 3 of them bulleted here. I'll start with this top one first. The Geological Society of America, they hire an outside firm to make videos for them and run something called GSA TV at their annual convention. So we got approached by that video firm to do a video about us, about the USGS? The UGS. Be like a 3 to 5 minute video that'll play continuously, along with 3 or 4 other agencies that they're highlighting at the GSA meeting, which is in Portland in October. So the cost for that was $12,500. We went ahead and engaged them to do that. The money, but they'll be here for 1 day, 10 hours. We're working with them on locations and topics right now. We get to keep all the B-roll video, meaning we can use it for the coming year. We're going to try and have them video stuff from all of our programs. Then we can roll it out over the next year in a lot of our marketing stuff. So we think it'll be worth the value. And then it will also be featured at the GSA and a national convention. And then we get to keep that video and we can use it for whatever we want.
Use it for social media.
Yeah.
You make sure you get the raw source files.
We will.
We'll likely use it in front of the appropriations subcommittee.
So anyway, we think that's a good thing. And we're working through that. Holly's been helping us on that. She's going to be our point of contact to make sure we get the messaging right. And so we're going to benefit from her service. So a number of big changes, like I already mentioned, Holly. We took the web services section, which has been in GIO, and this is one of our big changes. We pulled it out and put it where that manager reports directly to me now. And I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. I'm calling it data management services, and everyone else seems to be calling it data services. So I guess we're going to have to resolve what we're going to call this program or group. But that, because there's so much new money being spent, and everything we do, we want to get into a database that's manageable. I don't want to have to cross-platform how many different formats and databases. And then we want to be able to get it out to the public. Jay's part of that group. He's one of the guys on our web development that's kicking butt. And so we appreciate that. And then we've replaced all the staff in the bookstore. Those are a couple of big changes in this group. So data management services, we're just getting more and more in digital format. And we've got to get the technical solution so that it flows from a data byte to a consumable product out on the web. And the great thing about our web services program, we get called on to do work for other agencies now. So during the drought, editorial got called on to help with the graphics. We're working with I'm working on a new web page now for who?
It's the Department of Emergency Management.
It might be. Yeah, we're working on another web page. We wrote the earthquakes one.
So do they pay for this?
Yes.
Great.
Sometimes.
No.
I'm not sure how much we got paid for
Shouldn't be doing
earthquakes.
favors.
Yeah.
They're not doing you any, I promise.
Yeah. But the point is, the one thing that the Governor Cox has really emphasized, he sent out this little that's the wrong word, a list of things that he believes in. Okay. And one of the things he does not believe in is somebody saying, it's not my job. You know, we work for the state and let's see what we can do to help. Now, can we still go ask for that money? Yes, but if they come asking, we're going to try and say yes. And
It's actually not a job unless you're getting paid.
yeah. So we'll get to you guys in a few minutes if you can wait. Thank you. But getting that out to the public. And so what these guys are doing, we're recognized across the state now as putting out good web content and good web access. And so again, talk about focus areas and people being stretched and stressed, you know. I got asked about, are there any hot spots for salary that the state needs to address now? And I said, GIS analyst. And I sent.
It's not like there's any competition.
No. And so I actually built a little table and I went to the state's webpage and they talk about what jobs that are similar to GIS analysts get paid in the private sector. And then I put on that same chart what we pay in the state. And I also had the state and then like Salt Lake County averages, state averages, and then the US. And this is an area we're way behind. So HR asked me for that and I sent it off to them. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I'm standing up and speaking up because this is an area that we want to keep our good talent. So again, same stuff on this data management services program is that it's imperative we share our data in a way that everyone can see it. So the new GIS manager that we're starting interviews for today, right? Okay. Will be in this group. So we have the data manager, Martha Jensen, who we brought in on that first budget building block that I came on board, is in this group. Some GIS, and we'll have the GIS manager there as well, because we want them to work cohesively. We want that to be a seamless process. So take it, man, you guys are on cue. So speaking about the bookstore, I told you that they would be coming in a few minutes. Our new staff for the bookstore are there in the back. You want to introduce us, Mark?
Yeah, we'll come up to the podium so the online people can see us. And in the bookstore, we've been masking on the sales floor, but not in the back. I'm going to take mine off now so that you can see me. But yeah, this is our new bookstore manager, Jackson Smith, and he graduated from Weber State, so he is a geologist, which we're hoping that he can help us with public inquiries that come in through the bookstore and rock ID and all those sorts of things. He was most recently with McKay Minerals, so he has had some background staking claims and doing analytics for samples and those sorts of things. There we go. Thanks, Jay.
I was wondering if I was blocking that. Sorry.
Okay.
First, Jay. Yeah. So Jay's our coordinator. He's the master of ceremonies.
And Jackson started last week, Tuesday. And this is Tori Duncan. And Tori graduated from BYU also in geology. So she's got a geology background. And she worked with Ron Harris on tsunamis in Indonesia, which is really cool. And I'm excited about this. Tori also was the sign artist at Trader Joe's until, I guess, yesterday. So I'm hopeful she can help make the bookstore look better.
You paint the inside of windows backwards?
Oh, not backwards.
No, you paint it, you gotta put the last color first.
Yeah. Staff.
Yeah.
Certificate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Tori started 20 minutes ago. So this is the first thing she's done.
Welcome to the home. And I'm glad you're both geologists.
Yeah. Any questions for us or?
One statement, that's fantastic. Welcome aboard.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah, we are very glad you're here.
Especially, so Jim is part of GIO, Jim Davis, and Jim and I have been running the bookstore. So Bill said that's not my job, was one of the governor's pet peeves. I had my first retail job starting 2 weeks ago. So I'm very thankful they're
So
here.
Mike, kudos to Jim Davis, if you don't know Jim. Jim's the person extraordinaire that goes to the schools. He does untold seminars, helps run Education Week. He's really good, and the kids love him. But Jim and Mark they pitched in to run the bookstore, so.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
So I think that's it then.
Did you have any, Jim thing?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to just kind of remind folks that, and for you guys to know, you're coming into a bookstore run by a state geologic agency that happens to be the top grossing revenue generator of any state geologic bookstore in the country, and by no small measure. So, you know, you were talking kind of about reputation, but yeah, it's a highly regarded retail outlet that I'm excited to see you guys coming in and taking over and kind of continuing on with that legacy. So.
Very good, and it certainly deserves that reputation too. I use it all the time, and it's fantastic.
And look for changes. We've already been going through stock and cleaning up and organizing, and they're gonna make it a better bookstore.
New perspective.
Yeah.
A fresh perspective. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks.
Welcome on board.
Thanks, Mark. Now they're gonna go open the bookstore, right?
Yes.
It opens at 10.
Yes.
I think it's on our slide here. Thanks. Bye. Now, was their timing great?
Yeah.
That was perfect. Yeah, we're excited to have 2 geologists in the bookstore. That's going to help a lot, I think. That'll be really good. And in the library, you know, we have a halftime person, Suzanne, that runs the library. She'll meet anybody by appointment. She's here like in halftime. The other halftime, she's up at the U of U in one of the library, medical library. What type of library is she at? Is it medical?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in the medical library. So she's a librarian. I mean, a true librarian. And one of the things she did do, I don't have it in here, is we made that transition to DOI, which is a digital signature that you can put on every document. It really enhances your searchability. And so our documents that were getting searched, we had a big surge once we went to DOI. And we've seen a lot of that. Interestingly, a few weeks ago, I had an email from one of the state geologists, I think it was from New Mexico, asking about who uses DOI and what are the benefits. And so there are not many of them yet using it. And so there are a few of us out there in the country, but not a lot. But it's what librarians and researchers use, this digital signature. Any other comments that I left out?
No, you know, it kind of provides a service maybe more to the academic community. Because research journals, they've been using DOI, USGS for quite a while now. Alaska was one of the first state surveys to implement it.
Alaska, yeah, I know Illinois does, we do.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a topic of interest. Let's see, top topics tend to be earthquakes, fault related. Of course, you can imagine that from last year. Funding and budget. Do you want me to start here and you let me know when you want to jump in, Jodi?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure I get all the numbers right. We're still working on closing out. I shouldn't say that. The last fiscal year is closed out, I believe. Any fine tuning or you 99.9%?
We had one the other day, but now it should be done.
We always say, you know, we've submitted it. We were ahead of the game. Jodi does a great job. But the state of Utah really weathered well the economic downturn and challenges that came with the pandemic. We, as a state, I mean, like I said, the fears that we were going to have of how bad it might be really turned around. I'll come to that in a minute. You know, we still don't think mineral lease funds are the way to go. They recovered significantly, and I'll show you those numbers in a minute. But it's not, I just don't see it as sustainable. It's just too much of a yo-yo. It goes up, it goes down. It creates panic like it did last year for us. to help stabilize that, and this is just a repeat of what I showed you in April, just a reminder that Senate Bill 133 was passed to tap into severance taxes, not mineral lease taxes, because mineral lease is only applied to on production on federal lands, whereas the severance taxes are across the board, including tribal.
Yes, that's right.
And so we wanted to get in on some of that to help replace mineral lease. But the way the bill got written, it only said it would offset and supplant our general fund.
So what's going to happen to that? Is that going to get fixed, or is that, do we know?
We're working on it. I have met with our fiscal analysts. I've met with Senator Hinkins.
Did he mean it to go that way or no?
No, he didn't even know it had gone that way.
So there's a good chance we'll get it fixed because he's pretty influential.
Yeah, but there's still work on our part to be done to make that happen. But everybody's aware. We ran the flag up at the time, and we kind of got told, just hang on. Let's work it through a year, see if there's excess funds. You know, the good thing about this account, we're appropriated a certain dollar amount. If the amount that's fed into our account based on these percentages, now it says 2.5% of the first $50 million. We haven't hit $50 million but once, I think, in the last 20 or 30 years. And so that's a big bridge to pass. So don't even look at the numbers beyond 50 million. But 2.5% of the first 50 million of the average annual revenue. And that's like a 3-year average that they look at.
So oil production from the Uinta Basin, I don't remember the state total volume, but oil production from the Uinta Basin, you know, has recovered now to about 80,000 barrels a day and maybe closer to 85 now. And there is one thing on the horizon that could push that 50 million into play. And that is that on August 6th, the final environmental impact statement for the Uinta Basin Railway was published by the Surface Transportation Board. There will now be a 30-day comment period. And then the Surface Transportation Board itself will either issue a license to construct and operate the railroad or not. And if they do, and the railroad goes forward, you know, the minimum difference that you'll see, the railroad isn't planning to take any of that 80,000 barrels. That's coming by road from the basin to the refineries in Salt Lake. So to get 2 unit trains a day, a unit train's about 60,000 barrels a day. So the incremental increase in production from the Uinta Basin could be at a minimum for the railroad, probably around 250,000 barrels a day. And 260 maybe. And so that would get you to your 50 million pretty fast.
Yeah, and we could kick on that. The challenge here right now, the way it's written with the offset and
3 years
supplant.
down the road.
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah.
But the offset and supplant, right now they're just gonna say, what do you need? But if that fund, these are non-lapsing funds that go, and we believe they're gonna be paid quarterly.
Yep.
And as they go in, if they start to exceed what we've been appropriated, we may be in a position to go in and ask for that extra money.
Yeah.
Or we might need to wait a couple of years down the road. But somewhere down the road, if that account that doesn't lapse continues to grow, it'd be easy for us to say, here's our source. We go ask for a building block, we can ask for that appropriation from our building block or from our aggregate fund from severance taxes. So it won't help us in the short term, but in the long term, it might. So that's kind of the way we're looking at it. So anyway, yeah, we're working, you know, how do we get that changed so it's not just offset supplant, or make it easier in an interim, maybe we go and ask for some more. Talking to John Baza from Oil Gas, he's the director of Oil, Gas and Mining. Their forecasts are that it's going to be more than was originally forecast. So that might help us as something to go tap into.
Production's going up.
Production's going up.
It is, however, being constrained right now by a lack of truck drivers. Riley can
Everything's-
speak to that if you'd like, but there are people, I mean, the production's going up pretty quickly right now.
Yeah.
And Amazon and FedEx and UPS have stolen all the old oil field truck drivers.
Wow.
Not stolen them, they've paid them more.
They paid them more.
Which is what the trucking companies in the oil field are gonna have to do, is get them back.
Currently, we just Wasatch Energy has about 4,000 a day curtailed because we don't have available trucking.
And 2 weeks ago, you were getting that hauled. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
The people, the inability to find people. Now, I will tell you, like I said, everybody else has had that problem. And the UGS, we have not had that problem. I said 82 applicants for our curator. We had 36 for our GIS manager. We had 135 apply for our petroleum geologist a year and a half ago. 200 people apply in the wetlands groundwater and wetlands program. Interesting. So, okay. So here's a little bit, I'll do this one at some point, I guess, and just jump up when you want to jump up. Like I said, it was excruciating. The agony that we all went through, and the fact that you two, or that the board mobilized to start calling people when there were threats of cuts of 2, 5, or 10, plus the loss of mineral lease and the potential loss of building blocks. That was huge. And that was really painful at the time. I remember.
You should put the success of that on this organization. Alyssa's obviously a much better salesman than I am, but the salesmanship had nothing to do with it. You didn't have to sell, you just had to talk to these folks. And that wasn't because of who we were, that's because of who you are. And
thank you.
Yeah.
They already knew the reputation, and I think they needed to be reminded.
Yeah.
And it was good to make that connection again.
Yeah. We appreciated it, and it made a difference. Like I said, when we came out of that process, a lot of my peers like, how'd you do that?
Not tell them.
But we have good people. That's what I always my boss says, you guys are great. And I said, I have good people. We have got really good people. And so in the end, we got enough money that we're actually having to give money back to the state. And I'm sorry, but that pains me.
But the number went down from the beginning of the week to now. So
yeah.
Yeah, we had one more bill come through.
There you go.
Yeah, she updated the number. Yeah.
You called your vendor.
We tried, we really worked hard on it. But we were able, all the money that we were approved to lapse, or non-lapse limits, we were able to keep, which is good.
I may just add that there's stuff out of our control, and one of those was mineral lease. We get that June check in late July, and that came in $50,000 more than what we were forecasting. So of course, at that point, we can't spend it. We also had some outstanding charges that we were expecting to hit this for fiscal year 21, but because of timing, a lot of it was technology in our DTS, Department of Technology Services orders with computers and technology, and an Esri bill. So that amounted to about, all of that amounted to about $53,000 that we were hoping to have posted, but didn't come through in time. So we were really pretty close, actually.
Yeah, you're
our,
expecting those things to post, and and they say they will, but some of you know that chip makers are struggling, and sometimes you just don't get the computers when you think you will, and we've budgeted them for that year, and it just doesn't happen. Yeah. So anyway, we lapsed some, but that's okay. It's better than not being able to carry over all the amount we are appropriated for, which is we're excited about. So what was interesting is that at the beginning for fiscal year 21, we'd forecast pre-pandemic 1.1 million for mineral lease. And when things really went down hard last year, forecasts dropped to as low as it might be 400,000 for the year. and then it went up 500,000, then it went to 600. At the end of the year, we were forecasting 900,000.
950.
Huh?
950,000.
950. It went, yeah, I mean, just kept creeping up, the recovery. Gas prices, as you said, is part of that. We ended up getting a little over 1 million. So we're about 100,000 short.
I printed last night a 25-year Henry Hub gas price
Oh.
chart. Now, this isn't the price that we get in Utah. We get a pretty significant discount off of this in Utah.
Yeah.
But the fact is that, and I'm going to pass it around, I've annotated it here. I notice it's kind of small, but even I can see it, so the rest of you will be able to. But on the right-hand side is the current situation, and the volatility that you see there over 25 years is why we don't want to have this source of revenue for this agency, because oil's even worse than that in terms of volatility. Yeah. And it is, I guarantee you, that's the entire explanation for why you're getting more money. It's all in the natural gas price.
Okay, and I did not know that. I knew gas prices were up because I'm a fan of the higher gas price.
Yeah. Well, you and me.
Yeah.
For the same
You're
reason.
way more than me, but
Bill owns some.
I have
royalty
one,
interests.
in one well in Drunkard's Watch in Carbon County. And yeah, the first year that went online for the first 2 months, it was $9. And I thought, I'm going to I'm going to retire. And then when I retreated back to $1.50, $2, reality kicked in.
Well, if you look at the peak
Pay
on
for your
that graph,
groceries,
I sold gas in May of 2015 and for $10.50, or
Yeah.
2008 for 2000. In May of 2008, I sold natural gas for $10.51 at 1,000 cubic feet. In August, I was selling gas for $3. And in October, it was down to $2. And it's basically been between $2 and $3 with a few dips down and a few dips above ever since.
And that 2008 is when that first 2 months
Yeah,
were the,
of your well.
my well. After that, it's been.
That's not 4, right?
Yeah, I always say that once the
Sure.
gas prices are high, that's bad for my personal pocketbook, but it's good for my
Well,
my business pocketbook.
it actually has some significant long-term issues attached to it. And one of those is that part of the reason for the fact that the gas price is so high is that we finally have enough liquefied natural gas export capacity in this country that we're starting to see that affect the price of gas domestically. And it was cushioned last year. It came on, starting 2 years ago, and every few months a new plant comes on one of the coasts. And last year it was cushioned because everybody quit buying everything.
Yep.
But this year, after the first of the year, it just started to come. And I mean, one of the serious issues associated with this is that the energy transition, which we could talk about after lunch or something, but the energy transition is not going to be a transition. It's going to be a really slow evolution. And one of the things that's going to have to happen, despite the fact that environmentalists don't want to have to depend on any kind of fossil fuels, is natural gas is going to have to play a significant role as a bridge fuel to have the energy transition get off the mark. And if it costs twice as much as everybody was figuring it would cost, because most of us thought it was just going to cost $2 until we died, which will be sooner for some of us than others, but it has significant potential to impede the energy transition, which a lot of things do. Critical minerals even more.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So anyway, it's been better than we expected. Wasn't quite what we forecast for when we built the budget, but we got close.
It was a third of our budget 10 years ago when I joined the board.
Yeah. And we're 12.5% or something now.
Still unpredictable.
Still unpredictable. Couple of things here. I know we're running late. Do we need to take a break yet? Are you guys okay to keep going until we get done with this part? Okay. I know we're a little, that's okay. We got the building blocks, and one of the building blocks was to catch up on maintenance and fix stuff and replace equipment. What I didn't get was a list of the equipment, Jodi. I kept meaning to send you a question, and I did not. So that's why there's not a list of it, but microscopes were bought, GPS equipment was bought. Steve can probably tell you some of the things he bought. Anything else that I missed?
Main thing is we were able to buy 4 empty frequency GNSS units, 2 portable base stations, and 3 rover units to significantly enhance our ground information monitoring.
Yeah. You know, things like these eddy covariance towers. There's a lot of stuff that we were able to upgrade and or repair. We ended up not using yet, even though you approved it, the Core Center fund for the lights and for the shelves. We used our own funds for that.
And we did use, no, sorry, I corrected that.
Yeah, we were going to.
We were going to.
But when we realized how much we were going to
Then
lapse,
we
we started
had to.
charging it against stuff.
Yeah,
So we still have that account there. If we need to get more sales, we can dip into that again and go for that.
Yeah, probably need to do that.
But we got a lot of the things done that had just been lagging for years. And that was great. We also got, because we had a building block and ongoing funds, to do some payroll catch up. Because we were, again, way behind. We had a lot of people, we were able to touch at least 30 people's lives here. And I think, and that's what it does. And you think about the families that extend onto that, you know, it affected a lot of people. So some of that came in the form of an ongoing, a raise. Some of it came, we also did some
incentive awards.
incentive awards. Thank you, Jodi. Which means, you know, like after the earthquake, we gave the earthquake team an incentive award. I know, how much was it? $500, 1,000? Somewhere in there, but we could give out some incentive awards to some of the folks that had really done a good work, because we couldn't give raises to everybody. We
Is that what
tried.
those of us who are not in state government call a bonus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Incentive award. And there are different levels. So we got those approved. So again, we really, because the pandemic was hard for people and they needed to hear some good news. And so we were able to deliver that at this time. I had the core center, the things we did here. We got this new screen. That's a big screen. We got some new camera equipment that we can use to broadcast our meetings with. We did use the WattSmart program. They got us a big discount on the equipment and then the labor. And this thing will pay out in less than about 2 years, maybe less. And we're brighter and it looks better. I mean, even in this room, you know, we upgraded a lot of this, all of these. And we got the new shelving done out there as well. So I think this is where I kicked it to you. Is there anything you wanted to?
Am I able to just talk right here?
Yeah, you can talk right there.
Okay. If you want to open that first closeout summary.
That's this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to have to do here. Let's see, I think I already have it open. That's that one, right? But you can't see yet. Hang on a moment. I have to stop sharing this. I'm going to change the sharing of windows. Stop presenting. Now I'm going to share a window. Is that it? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was asked to share a window rather than my whole screen because of lagginess.
You might just slide it up just a little bit so we can have the whole screen. This is the closeout from last fiscal year that ended June 30th. And actually last week is when we tie it together. But you can see the fixed state funding, which is made up of general funds and mineral lease and the land exchange. That's called fixed state funding. We had a couple big additions this past year, the $1 million for the Bonneville Salt Flat restoration and the $750,000 for the Great Salt Lake Groundwater Studies. The revenue collected, that is based on outside funding, either federal grants or dedicated credits are from non-governmental or outside entities contracting with us to do work, and transfers might be other state agencies contracting with us to do work. So 2.2 million, and that really is our max. As I've worked here almost 7 years now, I've seen some ups and downs, and that's like we've already spoken about. multiple times, is that's really stretching our staff at that point. And so anything beyond that, additional outside funding, we really need more people to do that work, not just the funds to match it. So you see, we had total revenue of almost $10.6 million. And if you recall, we usually hover around 7 to 8 million. And that additional couple million is because of the Bonneville Salt Flats and Great Salt Lake funding. We had total expenditures of almost 8.2 million. And so that unspent balance of 2.4 million is broken up in a couple different ways. Doesn't look like we got the updated one up there, but we lapsed 158, right? 158,000. And then on the Bonneville Salt Flats, we did end up having about $2,500, $2,400 of expenditures this year. There's a little bit of personnel costs and some equipment that we were able to get this past year. So that 997,000 will roll over into this new year and go to the project that Bill talked about earlier. And we had non-lapse authority for 506,000. So that's the maximum we were able to carry over. So that's a good chunk to start the new year with. So that's a nice bonus, particularly since we are going to be losing 400,000 of one-time money that, for this new year. And the Great Salt Lake funds, the 750,000, that is non-lapsing as well. So that is rolled over into this new fiscal year. I've outlined the expenditures by program there and category. Their admin is a little inflated this year due to some of the one-time expenditures that we incurred for equipment, and a couple of the programs when they had large equipment purchases that were a fixed asset. I left that in that program for accounting purposes, but pretty good spread. And as usual, our personnel is around 85%. That's been steady for several years. So that's the closeout. I don't know if you want me to touch on next year at all. I can be really quick. There's not a whole lot to mention.
I can bring it up.
Any questions on the closeout? Okay.
Which one did you want? This
I didn't know if
budget bill summary or operating budget estimate?
just estimate.
Okay.
The bill summary is kind of messy. That just outlines, and I could send these two out to you later. I don't think they were in the original packet, but so this month we're in the process of going through and setting up our operating budget. Bill will show on the screen what was actually appropriated to us, but then we go through and we work with the managers and look at what outside funding we do have and any rollover from projects we had last year that's rolling over into the new year. And we set up our operating budget. We outline all of our staff and our other expenses and, put it together in a big package, just like a puzzle. But right now you can see the appropriation is about almost 11 million. And a lot of that is the outside funding, which makes up federal funds, dedicated credits, and transfers, is currently appropriated at about 2.7 million. And that is artificially high because we only have authority to spend on dedicated credits and federal funds. We only have authority to spend 125% of what was appropriated. So we do want to have that appropriated a little high in case we get projects awarded throughout the year that weren't originally appropriated, so that we would have the authority to spend that. And transfer revenue, we are only allowed to spend 100%, up to 100% of transfer revenue. So when we built the budget requests, this budget request almost a year ago, we want to estimate those highs so that we have room to grow throughout the year as new projects come in. But like I mentioned, right now we are working with managers and setting up that budget. Last year it was about 2.2 million. I assume that's probably what we're going to be about this year. Maybe a little bit more. State map came in quite a bit higher. And, but like I said, much more than that, and outside funding, we need additional staff. So if we can, get some of those building blocks for additional personnel, we might be able to bump that up a little bit, but.
What is Mike's adjustment?
Oh, Mike Vandenberg, yeah. So currently, the mineral lease funds are appropriated at.
Okay, so that's his, okay.
Yeah, so they're appropriated at 726.5. However, he's estimating it's gonna be 1.4 million, yeah. So, that's what I actually put in the operating budget. So I hate to say, we have two books, because we have the appropriation and then we have our operating budget.
So I can hire 6 people.
And you'll notice there we have that restricted fund, the new restricted fund of the UGS oil, gas, and mining. And so currently that is appropriated at 622,000. So it'll be interesting to see how that works this first year. And particularly with the offset Insar plant. So it'll be interesting budget year, but that's where we're at for this year so far.
And Jodi, did you say you would send us this spreadsheet?
Yeah, I could send these. He had another one that outlines, it's a colorful one that outlines the session, all the different bills.
Yeah.
That have funding associated with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And did that one go out already?
No, these two haven't gone out. This is what you just
They
added.
were done in the last week.
Okay, yeah, no, I got that.
Yeah, these were added yesterday.
Yeah.
They are in his presentation. If that was, do you send your presentation out?
I did not,
Okay.
but we can send it.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, some of that information, we're catching up between what was available today and what was available last week.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So I had the old version up. Sorry,
That's
I linked it to the newer one, but
Yeah, I thought we.
I already had it. I had already had it open. So, okay.
Any questions on last year's or this year's?
I have a question on this
Yes.
spreadsheet. I can't find anything having to do with Forge on here anymore. Is it gone?
It's on the very end. So it'll be on the last page, the very bottom. That's where I put it under admin because it does cover multiple programs.
Okay. I thought it'd be under energy and minerals. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't have any update for the next phase of funding. We're
Right.
still wrapping up. This is phase 3, year 2.
So have we gotten all the money from Forge that we anticipated we were going to get?
We still have until the end of September to finish out what's currently contracted with them. I don't know what's going to be on the next phase yet.
They still have us doing
you-
work, so I don't know
Okay.
how much yet. But
Okay.
Yeah.
they're transitioning to more almost operational on their next wells.
Yeah.
But as a result of this testing, they're going to need us to still continue the monitoring the ground elevations and do that. So they're out there. What's fun for them is whether it's raining or it's blistering hot, they're still out there measuring their stations to make sure we have the elevations. Something I did not mention, and this is probably worth bringing up. We'll come to you next, Mike. One of the things in our building block we're going to ask for, you're familiar with something called Insar Data. Insar is a satellite that orbits the Earth and hits nearly the same spot about every 28 days. And so you can measure the differences in elevations within a few centimeters. Not kind of meter resolution, there's about on horizontally, but centimeter resolution vertically. And so Insar Data could be really useful for us at the state. Oh, I like standing here. They can't see me. I'm trying to get out of the camera here. So for drought conditions, as groundwater, like we were talking about Enoch, as that ground is moving because the ground table there's dropped over the last 10 years, like 100 feet. And so there are places.
Groundwater table.
Groundwater table.
In Utah.
Yes, in Enoch, Utah. Yeah. The groundwater table has dropped over 100 feet. But there are places where it's dropping more subtly, and Insar Data could help us highlight as we start to monitor for drought, what are the effects of drought on our groundwater supplies? It's also data we could use for slippage and hazards and things like that. So we're gonna,
Landslide monitoring.
landslide monitoring, movement, how far did it move? So we're talking about that as well, building into our building block. Someone that can come on board and be a remote sensing specialist, but we need to have that Insar Data skill set. Because I think, again, you talk about money that's available and needs, drought is going to be something that's going to persist. At least that's the forecast. And the state really needs to get a good handle. And this is one way we can contribute to that understanding. So.
You'd be able to see the eustatic rebound at Lake Powell.
From the water coming out. You'd be interested to see if there is.
Yeah, oh, I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I know you are. Or Utah Lake or any of them. So anyway, do we want to go to Mike or take the break now?
Let's take the break.
Okay. So when do we want to come back? I have 10:22.
10:30.
10:30.
10:30.
Yeah.
Okay, so 8 minutes. So we'll take a break, everyone. Thank you, Jay, for being the MC.
How's the coverage doing?
too crazy of a market right now, but even, it's great to sell, but terrible to buy.
Well, I'm gonna be a big winner.
Yeah, me too, but I don't.
Because I'm gonna pay cash for my next house and it's gonna be a third of the size of the one that I have now, so.
Who's doing? That's why I'm getting to, I don't want to pay the
And
price I
honestly,
need to for that new house.
The price, the percentage increase for houses over $1 million is
That's an
actually higher than
intimidating proof.
the increase for cheaper houses is.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
what I'm
buyers
saying.
are more easy to get.
Where they got, there's a lot more. There's a lot more on the market.
There are 10 houses on my street and 2 of them have sold in the last 6 months. They were both cash deals.
Yeah.
So, one for 3.5.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Seems like a,
Oh.
almost artificially inflated, because I just wonder when it's gonna stabilize a little bit.
Any on the
I think
panel?
it's starting to
That'd be kind of hard to
It has started.
From my realtor friends.
A lot, I've been paying really close attention to houses in Washington and Summit County, and it's amazing how many have
So we're gonna go ahead and
have now been
start.
on the market 3 or 4 times.
I know we're
The
behind.
sale fails for one reason or another.
Right.
You okay if I turn the time over to
Yes,
Mike,
please.
talk for a couple
Mike.
minutes?
Okay, just a couple administrative things. When you started your term on the board, you should have received a handbook, okay? I was looking through it a while back and noticed that it was really in need of updating. There was a lot of outdated information and some organizational and formatting things that I thought could have been improved, and an embarrassingly large number of typos and grammatical errors and things. So it's like, let's update this. So I did. So a PDF was attached in the board packet, so you have that. If anybody wants a printed copy, I've got some here. Which, okay, I'll just maybe. And I guess the impetus for this was with the 2 new board members coming on board. And so I wanted to have something up to date for them. So yeah, that's for you all. And then the other administrative item is the UGS has one administrative rule that we have authority for, and it deals with acceptance and maintenance of confidential information. So we sometimes get proprietary industry data shared with us that we maintain. Anyone can request access to that otherwise confidential information. And so Rule R638-1 addresses how we handle those situations. Every 5 years, that rule needs to be reviewed. And so that review came up this last spring. And again, as I was looking through the rule, first line in the rule is basically the section of code that authorizes that rule, and it was out of date. The 2009 legislature revised and renumbered Utah code, and so the reference to code was not correct. And then just kind of went from there. There were other things that needed to be updated, mostly related to electronic information and GRAMA, the Government Records Access and Management Act. Did I get that right? Thank you. So I started down this rabbit hole of updating the rule. And again, a file of a draft of the update was included in the board packet, just for your reference. It's of interest to the board because the board is actually mentioned in the rule. If we are requested to provide confidential data, basically the decision lies with the director, the UGS director, and there's a provision in the rule for keeping the board up to date on any kind of activity related to confidential information. If a decision that the director makes gets appealed by someone requesting the confidential information, the board may have to get involved in terms of bringing that situation to resolution. So it's very rare that we deal with confidential information other than accepting it and maintaining it. But just kind of a heads up that the board could have a role in activity related to confidential information.
So if you have confidential information and somebody comes in and requests to see that their request has to be a gamma request, is that right? And then you
Not
go
sure if
through
it's
it.
technically, yeah, for
Most
compliance.
of the rule actually conflicts with grandma. And so I think we could probably just drop the rule altogether because in grandma, it already talks about requiring
Yeah,
protected
I
information.
mean, that's a process.
Yeah.
And that's a process, and that's, so that lays out the process for getting access to that.
Yeah, all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the Grandma Act is a statute and a rule is subordinate to statute. So if somebody wants to push it, I think they could probably just invalidate the rule as it is because the statute is superior to the rule.
Yeah, it just kind of addresses internally, processes
Oh,
for
I
dealing
see.
with those kinds of things. And, we, in amending the rule, the Attorney General's office took a look at the rule and made sure that things were not in conflict.
I got it. Thank you.
So the process was, a review by the AG's office and a review by the Office of Administrative Rules. Then it goes to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget for review there. And that's where things currently stand. So the current draft of the amended rule will be published in the Utah State Bulletin. I expect it to be in the one that's published next week. There's a 30-day public comment period for it. And if things go well, the new amended rule would become effective September 21st.
Okay.
So just an FYI on that. And then in terms of legislative activities, we've been involved in a couple of ongoing efforts for earthquake risk reduction legislation. Last spring, Bill and Senator Jani Iwamoto talked here. The senator was here for the ceremonial bill signing for the new Utah Raptor State Park. And she is very interested in earthquake early warning. And also is pushing things related to FEMA funding for retrofitting unreinforced masonry buildings, or URMs. And so there's discussions going on between her and us and DEM and the Utah Seismic Safety Commission at large. Those are ongoing. But we've just made it very clear to her that we are available and interested in helping out, any way that we can. A lot of these earthquake risk efforts, they're a multidisciplinary thing involving the engineering community and real estate and emergency management. And the geologic component is just, that one component. But we've made it clear that we're available to help. And then just maybe a couple of months ago, I became aware of some draft legislation that Representative Claire Collard is putting together. So she lives in Magna. And so last year's earthquake epicenter was in her backyard. She had a bill in last year's session that didn't make it through. So she's kind of tweaking things there, and it deals with an educational effort on the part of the Utah Seismic Safety Commission related to URMs. In Grant Willis, URMs are, fixing that issue is a passion of his, and he heads up Earthquake Safety Committee on the Utah Geological Association. So he's kind of taken it on himself to work with Representative Collard on that. I haven't heard any updates recently, so I'm not sure where that stands, but there's at least those two pieces of legislation that are likely in the works for the upcoming session.
I know I mentioned Grant does that on his own time. Not part of his job, just he's personally passionate about this.
That was his platform when he was the president of the UGA also.
And it still is a passion for him.
Yeah. So the bill that didn't make it through the last session having to do with realtors providing notice specifically for each building that they are involved in selling or leasing that it's an unreinforced masonry building or isn't. Is that coming back, do you think?
It may. I haven't seen anything yet. Yeah, that was a disclosure bill. I forget the name of the representative now, but
Well, we had a big thing about it because there was a assertion that there was all kinds of monkey business going on in the lobbying for and against it. And I don't know. I mean, we got something from you guys about it.
Yeah, we got this anonymous, well.
Yeah, semi-anonymous.
Signature,
right.
You're guessing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people across the state got that.
And it was heavily opposed by the Realtors Association, which
so
it'd be hard to get anything through
the bill's about, but if you get URMs, if we can just increase public awareness, we can counterbalance that. Because people need to know. If we'd had a magnitude 7, it would have been about 80,000 homes destroyed.
Well, that kind of stuff will be in the new.
It'll be in the new
putting down roots on it.
Right.
with the new updates.
So, yeah.
So if we can find ways to increase education, I know Rick, you guys offered to, or Rick Mark, excuse me, I was looking at Rick, but meant to say Mark. You'd be willing to go on the stump if you had some materials to go talk about some of that. So we're working on that. We're trying to get that education material and get it done. Okay.
Yeah. And then Bill already mentioned, ongoing conversations with Senator Hinkins on last year's SB 143.
Okay. Thank you. So like I said, we're behind here, but we're going to go to this. We're going to hear from Tyler Knudsen first. Are you on, Tyler? Hello, Tyler.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Okay.
Okay, good.
And then I'll go to your slides. I have them in. I copied them in here.
Excellent.
And then we'll go to Jessica when he's done. So Tyler's going to talk to us about the field trip.
Excellent. Greetings from Cedar City. So I'll make this really quick. So myself and Bob Beek have been tapped to lead this field trip. Bob has several decades worth of experience in mapping projects in southwestern Utah. And I've been here in St. George or in Cedar City for 15 years. And so we're really excited. We've put together kind of a basic outline for some ideas for some field trip stops. But we're definitely going to have to whittle it down to probably about half of what we have proposed right now. And a lot of it's just going to depend on kind of last second conditions, depending on weather, and just site conditions. The construction boom down here is ongoing. So a lot of field trip stops, that we typically like to go to may very well be under a subdivision right now. So we got to kind of check some of the proposed stops. But it's going to be 3 days from October 13th to the 15th. And that Wednesday and Friday, those are just going to be shorter, mostly travel days. But we'll try and work in a couple of stops, on the way to St. George, and then on Friday, a couple of stops kind of in the Cedar City area on the way back to Salt Lake City. And this is a great time to visit this part of the state. Temperatures should be pretty mild and enjoyable in St. George in mid-October. And if we're lucky, we'll still have a little bit of fall color up in the high country. If you want to go to the next slide, Bill. So day one, the main goal is just to travel from Salt Lake City to St. George. We'll be apparently staying at the Fairfield Inn in downtown St. George. And so what we were thinking was stopping on the Markagant Plateau, which is the high country just east of Cedar City, and visiting a couple of stops that kind of illustrates the Markagant, what we call the Markagant mega slide. And this is one of the largest aerial landslides known on Earth that Bob Beek and some other colleagues of his have been studying for the last decade. We're always learning more about the Markagant mega slide. But it was about this is a landslide complex that's about 30 miles long, 10 miles or so wide, and is just massive. We've kind of run out of superlatives for this landslide. It's prehistoric, very old. It happened about 23 million years ago. But there are some really interesting sites we can see in the field. And so what a couple of ideas Bob had was to see the pseudo-tacholite site. And this is kind of illustrated in that photo in the lower left there. And this is where, when this slide failed catastrophically, the rock was moving fast enough and there was enough pressure where it actually melted the rock along that slide plane and liquefied some of that rock into basically molten glass that was infused into the country rock. And so there's a place there by Penguich where you can see this molten rock, which looks a lot like obsidian, that occurs in these veins. So that's a really cool site. So that's one idea he had. And then another one he'd like to do is just a short hike near Sydney Peaks, which is near Bryan Head, which is to some, I believe, is some striations and places where you can actually see the failure plane and the slide plane for the slide. And that's nearly at about 11,000 feet. So I just want to give everyone fair warning. It's not uncommon to get altitude sickness at that elevation. And if you have heart or breathing problems, Bob wants to do about a mile-long hike. So let us know early if that's going to be a problem, and we can always, see other things that are not quite at that elevation. And then, of course, in mid-October, we could get a snowstorm. It may not be an option at all. So a lot of this we'll just have to check as we get closer to the date. And so while we're in that area, I'm sure we'll make a stop at Cedar Breaks to see the colorful Claron formation, and then also talk about some groundwater and karst issues on the Markagant Plateau. Next slide, please. So day 2, we just want to kind of focus on the St. George area, kind of limit driving. And we've got, our proposed itinerary, we've got all kinds of stuff in there. Again, we're probably going to have to whittle that down to about half of what we've proposed. And so we're open to suggestions. But on the geology side, these are the things that Bob is really interested in. We've got 3 kind of world-class state parks there that beautifully illustrate the geology of the St. George Basin. Of course, you got Snow Canyon, where you've got those contrasting colors of white Navajo sandstone against red Navajo sandstone. And then you've got that dark black young Santa Clara lava flow kind of juxtaposed with all of it. So it's just kind of a kaleidoscope of geology there that's quite interesting. Quail Creek State Park, again, very interesting structures. You got the Virgin Anticline that is beautifully exposed there. We could show effects from the 1989 catastrophic failure of the dike that holds back that reservoir that occurred on New Year's Day in 1989 because that dike was founded in water-soluble gypsum. So there's some really interesting things to see there. Dinosaur discovery site, thousands of dinosaur tracks, a lot of them in situ, where they actually built the dinosaur museum over existing track sites. So that's an option, and an easy stop. Silver Reef Mining District. If you want to go to the next slide. These are kind of some more hazard-oriented stops that I'd like to see, at least a couple of these. Of course, the Hurricane Fault, which is kind of the Wasatch Fault of southwestern Utah. It's a major seismic source. And along with the Washington Fault, which runs right through urbanized area of Washington City. These are hazardous faults that we've been studying quite a bit. And currently, myself and Adam Hiscock are remapping these fault zones using LiDAR data with USGS, with partial USGS funding. So that's a fun project. And so I'd like to give you a glimpse at some of those fault exposures. Other hazards, rockfall is a huge problem in St. George Basin. The photo here is showing a 2013 rockfall that seriously injured a woman. She survived. Also in 2013, that was kind of the year of the rockfall in St. George. We had a double fatality, unfortunately, in Rockville. So I'd like to show a couple of subdivisions that have popped up that are in these rockfall hazard areas and ways that we could use, some of our hazard mapping to try and avoid development in some of these known hazardous areas. There's lots of landslides to see as well in the St. George Basin. And of course, St. George is a destination place. So if you have any interest in something that we don't have on the list, we're definitely open to other ideas. So if you want to go to the next slide. And so day 3, so again, the goal just to get back to Salt Lake, but on the way, we'd like to make at least a couple of stops. Myself and Bob Beek are finishing up a state map funded project for the eastern quarter of the Cedar City 30 by 60, where we're mapping at 1 to 24,000 scale. We're finding a lot of interesting things. So a couple of ideas we have is to visit the Marshall Creek breccia, which is a Jurassic age breccia in that photo in the lower left. It's been kind of enigmatic and mysterious. These big limestone blocks just kind of floating in a kind of a frothy, sandy matrix. And nobody really knows exactly how this, what the depositional environment for this Marshall Creek breccia was. So that's a fun one to visit and kind of ponder over. And then it sounds like you guys have talked a little bit about the subsidence and ground fissures, earth fissures in the Enoch area. If you haven't seen those, I think that's definitely worth a quick stop to look at those fissures. With the recent flooding we've had, it really kind of emphasizes those fissures, makes them very photogenic. So that would be a very convenient, nice, quick stop on the way back. And then I know Bill has mentioned he has access to, from what I've heard, is just a world-class mineral collection in Milford. So that's another option for on the way home. But that's what we have. And that's, typically with most geologists, we're pretty over-ambitious with our field trips. And so we're going to have to whittle that down, like I said, to about half. But we will, I'll do some scouting and some reconnaissance and kind of check on conditions and just watch the weather. And we'll be able to whittle that down. And it should be a really fun, relaxing trip for everybody. But if you have any questions, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Any questions for Tyler? None? Okay.
Okay.
So I think I had a slide here. So now we're here about hazards from Jessica. And I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to start her presentation. So just so you know, I put yours to display in a window rather than taking the whole screen.
Okay,
Makes it easier to share.
okay. And then is Ben on?
Yeah, Ben, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
I think that's it. Make sure it comes up. I added your names. So you need page down up there in the corner, or you can just hit
Okay.
So this is Jessica. She's one of our geologists in the hazards program.
oversees a lot of like landslides and stuff, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to be teaming up with Ben Erickson, who also works in the hazards program with me, and I'll run the slides. We'll kind of split this presentation. He'll talk about some of the modeling, and I'll go over kind of more of the general information. Just kind of some background. We flew our drone in Zion National Park in 2019 for the Cable Mountain rock avalanche that occurred there. And the Weeping Rock Trail has been closed since that event. They haven't been able to open it. They've been hoping to get us back in to refly so that we can see how much sediment has been removed just from time and rain. But there's been a ban on drones with the federal government, and so we haven't been able to fly or get permission. Then with the floods that happened a little while ago, they were able to get emergency approval for us to come and fly the drone to look at those floods. And so we were able to go up to Cable Mountain at the same time. We got fast approval from the board to apply for funding to work with them, and we were able to mobilize our drone team within a week and go down and fly. So these are some pictures that Tyler took. This is a really data-heavy presentation, so hopefully things will load, but sorry, that's a little blurry. Oh, this was just a video of the news articles of these floods that occurred. There was a lot of damage down near the south entrance and their shuttle staging area. It mostly was due to culverts not being able to handle all of the sediment. They were designed for the water flow, but not the sediment. So our footage will hopefully help them redesign these culverts, and they're probably going to switch it all out to low water crossings instead of piped drainage systems. But there's no sound on that, so we'll just keep going here. So Tyler was able to get out there the day after the floods happened and got some great pictures. They clean it up really quick, try and open these areas so that the many, many tourists they have can get back out there. And Bill said he showed a few of these earlier.
Showed one of them, that first one.
The Watchman Trail was closed and damaged. This is that paved trail there that kind of goes around the campground. The South Gate took a lot of damage, and as well as Springdale. This is right near the South Gate. Some of the water that came down. Really scoured out. It was just coming off of the cliff faces up there. So due to this emergency approval, we put together our flight paths for flying these hard-hit flood areas and flew over the South Gate. We broke that into two separate events so that we never had to fly over the road, and they were able to keep the gate open and keep people coming in. And then on the other side of the canyon, yeah.
So basically with the drone, you're not allowed to fly over people. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the mentality behind why do we do two paths.
Yeah, so we stood on the one side of the road and flew up and then crossed the other side of the road and got the portion down by the Virgin River. And then we were able to fly over, that's kind of the staging area for all of the shuttles, and they had a bunch of water come down on that side as well that ended up in the Virgin River and then flooding as it went further down. So this is the Zion National Park geologist, Robin Hendrick, who was able to get us the fast approval and that we've worked with on past projects quite a bit. And then we have Adam Hiscock setting up the GPS, getting a point for our flights.
And he's a geologist in our program.
He's a geologist in our program as well. He's the main pilot. Ben and I also have our FAA drone pilot's licenses, and we're working on getting enough hours to be able to do solo flights. We have a good program in place here where we all get flight time, and then we can go out and fly together. So So this is the drone kind of taking off, and being able to fly the drone in a national park is a privilege that is amazing to be able to have. This is our team as we're all kind of looking at the drone as it's flying. This is the park biologist who comes out with us on every flight with his spotting scope so that we can make sure we're not going to be attacked by any birds. The Cable Mountain area does have some nesting California condors, and so we saw those flying around this time. It was really neat. They don't seem interested in the drone at all, so we just kind of watch them just to make sure that the drone doesn't scare them or that they don't try and attack it. And this is just one of the pictures that one wasn't Tyler, from the drone looking down at that hard hit scoured area over by the south gate. And I'll show you some of the models that we've made from that. We're still putting together the data, getting some volumes for them that they can use to redesign their flood culvert systems. And Ben will talk about these, and I'll just switch the slides as he needs.
Okay, so this is a combination of the flights, at least near the south gate and the shuttle maintenance area. So I've outlined some polygons for deposition and erosional areas. So I could then take some calculations from the model based off of that. So this is the area is a clip down of the drone flight. That basically, when the drone flies, it'll take pictures every so often for coverage. We gather those pictures together, then assemble them into and stitch them all together into a 3D model. And so from that 3D model, we can then place control points, which is what Adam was doing with the GPS. He was marking an easily locatable point on the ground that we have a good GPS location on, that we can then assign it in the model itself and bring down some correlation and registration to older or earlier models for comparison. And so in this case, I registered our model with the 2015 LiDAR. That's, I believe it's a 0.5 meter in this area. And then as far as resolution for how well the DEM can look, the digital elevation models for comparison. With our model, we were able to get down to about probably 3 centimeters of error or so. I'd have to double check that, but it was better resolution than the model, than the LiDAR model or DEM. And so there's some, you might find some different or off errors in this, but if you go to the next slide, this is just the results of the differencing there without the polygons. And then if we go to the next slide, this is...
Back up a slide, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just from the color bar, so anything is in blue has had a loss of thickness.
Correct. Yeah, red and
the thickest.
so anything yellow is good. Anything slightly red or blue shows some minor differencing happening compared to the two elevations.
Red has been deposition from the 2015 LiDAR.
Yes, since that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just north of the gate. You can see the south gate. There's a white box. I eliminated everything that's over 2 meters as far as the differencing, because it also will capture the trees. And if there's a difference in trees between that data and our data, then they'll just show bright red or bright blue. So I tried to eliminate that to highlight areas better. And so that's why you see sprinklings of red and blue throughout. Those are plants that it saw some differencing between those times. But we see some high deposition towards the top, which is in the top canyon area there, and some scouring in blue further to the right of that, and then down, see some scouring to the left as well towards the bottom. And then high deposition around that boulder that Jessica had a picture of earlier. That's where some deposition happened. Deposition around here is probably around meter, half meter up to a meter of sediment being brought down. I can go to the next one. And then with the south gate there, that white box, this is also showing that it was built since that time. And so the red that's next to it, that's actually, I'm expanding the road out and raising the ground up to accommodate for the new gate. But everything to the south of that appears to be fairly real, I guess you would say. There has been some removal of material. That's why it's shaded blue. So that whole field area had a lot of flow coming over it. I did highlight a couple of these in the polygons for some volume estimations. And then along the river, this is where the two models merge together, and there's some registration error, which will cause some highs and lows, which aren't real. So go next slide. So this is the shuttle maintenance area. So you can see there's a lot of scouring that took place near that, which is towards the bottom of the image. You can see the wash that came through. A lot of some of that is actually them removing material and piling it up. That's what the red are near the road, and that's where they were cleaning out so they could be prepared for anything else coming down after that event. And if you follow it down, all the scouring all the way down to the river looks real. And then down by the rear, there's a bright blue, which is at the top of the image near those trees. That's an actual scouring that came up, and it's about 2 meters deep as far as what's been scoured out from the river. And you can kind of see that they've removed the part of the asphalt in the parking lot. There's a defining line where it's yellow and then goes blue from left to right. And that blue is the removal of the asphalt. So that area looks pretty well constrained as far as good comparison. However, up by the maintenance to the south, all of the parking lot areas showing a depression or a lowering since the 2015 LiDAR data. So I don't know how real that is as far as what the actual difference in that case is. I'm really interested in getting some Insar data to compare over time to see if that is real and see what's going on in that area. And so here's some volume estimates based off of the polygons I drew. So there were 15 deposit polygons, and about, this is really estimating because I had to go around trees and everything like that, and boulders that were showing that there were too high of differences, but about 1,300 cubic meters of what was deposited from there. And then the removal, from the erosions, there was about, I highlighted 25 areas, and it was removed about 1,000 cubic meters of material from those areas. So it was a good event that we saw from the images of the depositions. I was able to highlight some good locations for as far as what to present to Zion for what their estimations can start from, and hopefully they can find this data useful.
So I'll just go over a few of these slides, and then Ben will talk about some of this modeling as well. While we were flying down there, we got back up to Cable Mountain so that we could refly after that rock avalanche. This was the source area from 2019 where a slab broke off. This is some pictures. I think this is one that Tyler got. He hiked up to the top on our first flight in 2019. He came in the back way and kind of was our top spotter, leaning over the edge of the cliff to watch everything. And you can see there's still a large chunk up there. This piece right there, it has a lot of void space behind it. So there's still a present hazard. That's some of our drone footage from the first flight. You can see all of how much sediment is there and why the trail remains closed. This was sent to me from the park geologist in November of 2020. They had a large rainstorm, and this just kind of shows how much material has been washing down over the last 2 years now. And so they're interested in seeing what it will take to kind of clean it up and if they're going to be able to open that trail at any time soon. So back to some of the models of our second flight, and Ben will talk about these.
Yeah. So here's the results of our model and comparing it with the 2019 data. So drone model to drone model in this case. You can go to the next slide. So this slide has the comparing 2019 to 2015. Back to that slide.
This one?
Yeah, good. So we're seeing that the highlighted areas of the depositions here, we're getting about, what was it, about 15 feet, 17 feet of deposition right in the center near the main switchbacks to the bottom, and then about a half meter of deposits on the trail themselves in highlighted areas for their crews to be aware of where the more deposition was taking place on, so they could be prepared to remove a lot of material. So when we compare the 2019 to the 2021, this past month we did the flight, we're seeing mainly some removal of areas. This is a big area to cover. You're not seeing the majority because the majority of what the model is based off of is on the cliff face, which is a thin sliver on this photo. But if this is comparing up to 3 meters of deposit or removal of material. And so if you go to the next slide and zoom in on this area here. So this is you can see the parking area for Weeping Rock. There's a fork in the trail there. The top trail goes over to Weeping Rock. The other one goes up to the rim of the canyon. And so both trails were impacted. And if you look closely, you can see some scouring just south of that clump of trees in the center. And that goes up and it's scoured out from there. So if we go to the next photo.
Okay, I was just going to mention something really quick here, something fun. One of the main reasons they want us to do this is because of the continual hazard of rockfall, and they're worried about, bringing in the heavy equipment, the safety of the workers. So the less amount of material, the better. And they've had all kinds of ideas on how to kind of scale that cliff and things like that. But so far, haven't come up with anything that will be safe enough. So this parking lot that you can see there is now just kind of being used as a storage area. Those blue bags are full of dried, compressed human waste that they fly out from Scouts Landing. Twice a day, a helicopter goes up as people are hiking up to Angel's Landing and cleans it out and brings them down. And so this has now become their temporary storage area for all of that. So
Keeps their employees in line. They don't want that job.
yeah, it keeps the curious tourists out, I guess, too. If they're like, whoa. So, okay. Anyway, sorry, Ben.
Yeah, no problem. Surprisingly, not that bad smelling. You can smell it, but not that bad. So back to the model. So as far as things to highlight here, the blue line, that's the S curve there, that's the scouring that we're seeing since the 2019 flight. And then further up, you can see some additional scouring that took place as well. So there is some erosion happening since 2019 in that area. We don't have any volume estimates yet on this one, but it's towards the center, it's about 1.5 meters material difference between over the past 2 years. So if you go to the next slide. So just want to look at the whole cliff face. This is a point cloud that was generated from the drone flights. This model is based off of the recent flight in July. And so just comparing the 2019 to 2021 data. And so if you go to the next slide. So the top portion, the white scar area, that's where the initial rock avalanche source area is at. Unfortunately, I don't know how believable these differencing values are because we were limited as far as how far we could fly up with the drone. We could barely make it up maybe over, I don't even know if we made it over 3/4 of the cliff face because of the restrictions that were placed on the drone. And so take those differences with a grain of salt. So next slide. So these look a little bit more real as far as comparing what values from 2019, because it more in line of getting a better model out of them. So we do see some blue removal on the I guess right side towards the center. So you can see some rock fall that took place there. I can show you in a minute. I'm going to do a quick tour of these models and zoom in into that location. But we're seeing some depositions still taking place and some removal of areas as well. Next slide. So let me just hop out but first of all, any questions while we change to my computer?
This is Ben, just to put a
Yeah,
face
that's
to
me.
our speaker there.
So Ben, are you going to try and share something?
Yeah, if I can, if that's all right.
Okay, we need to stop presenting this one. Hang on.
Okay, I'll let you run it. That's it. Unless there's any questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, are you seeing the map?
Nope.
1 second, Matt.
Okay.
I am, but they aren't.
Oh, okay. Somebody is.
Yep.
We see it now, Ben.
Okay, so just give you a quick tour. This is the Zion area. Let me just switch this over to a map. You can see the the models that we've done on the map here. Zoom into the south gate area. So here's a quick tour. Here's the south gate. We were able to do our flying from. So we can see some of the erosional areas up here to the north being scoured out there.
Wow.
Along the cliff face bases through here. This area over here is also scoured out. Some good scouring through here, and then we get to the areas where it started to deposit, which is around this large boulder. And over in this area had some good deposits and scouring as well. So moving down.
What was the size of the storm that caused this? I don't remember those numbers.
I don't either. Tyler, do you remember, or Jessica?
Was it a 100-year event?
I'm not sure. They got about an inch of water within an hour. It was just
An inch in an hour?
Yeah. So
That's a lot of water.
it's a lot of water.
Yeah,
It's
that's a lot.
smaller than some of the other events that they've had in Cedar City and Enoch and all of that. It was just very localized right in this area.
Yeah, and I'm assuming there's some information published on the size of the storm and, how it's ranked. I remember as a kid though, growing up in Eureka, that the county would always tell me that every time they had a storm out on the West Desert, they had to go place the culverts, and they always replaced them with bigger culverts, and the next year they got washed out.
Yeah, I'm probably what Zion's
There's no
doing.
way
All
you
of
can-
this was recently engineered and designed. This is
You're never gonna get it right.
Yeah.
It
We'll just get a bigger
It's Mother
storm.
Nature.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's going over to the shuttle parking, overflow parking, maintenance area. So here's the overflow large vehicle parking here. It actually would extend over to this area, but the floods actually lifted up the asphalt and transported it down. And so, and it got deposited further down. So they're having to redo all of that. If we zoom into this area, so it uncovered actually their sewer line. So they're going to have to make sure that maintains and doesn't get broken there. So a lot of scouring from their culverts. And this is actually one that goes over the road for the drainage. So it wasn't impacted too much. Here's the scouring that took place here near the river. It was about 6 feet of removal.
Wow. This is all from the drone imagery.
Correct.
On the DM. Are you dripping on the DM or on your own point cloud?
This is actually a tiled model, 3D model.
Okay, cool.
And so here's the culverts that they cleaned out. This is some of the material they removed to clean out the culvert. This is from the parking lot that they cleared out.
Those look like 6-foot culverts or something.
Way undersized.
Then some more scouring and erosion taking place up to this area. So we can see a lot of vegetation removal to see where the scouring and how the extent of the flooding took place up in this area before it was rechannelized down by the maintenance area. So if we zoom back out, go up the road a bit, we'll hit the Cable Mountain model. So here's the parking lot, the 2 trails, Weeping Rock's out of the model. Take a moment to fully load. So here's the scouring channel that has developed since 2019. There's a footbridge that's right here that is still intact, but there's trees that have fallen all around it and bent up the railing that was on it as well. So if we go up the trail a bit, we can see more scouring, see some rockfall deposits. Here's the switchback trail. And so this is a switchback area that was closed before the actual 2019 event, because there's a fork here that goes up to Hidden Canyon Trail. That's what these switchbacks are going to. And we've seen some new removal since 2019 in this area. So this is largely remained intact from 2019, this trail. And if we go further up, we can start to see more of the face itself. There is some removal that's in this area here that had some rockfall since then. But I believe these chunks were already missing in 2019. And we go up to the main source here. And to give you a scale of, these are large trees that are right here. And let me just grab a measurement tape and to give you a thickness. So that's 3.74 meters thick that's detached there. Wow. So around 4 meters is what I would estimate. Going up and down, ranging the most thick. So give you an idea of what took place as far as that's concerned. So those are the models. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Any more? Are we good? They do some good work.
Yeah, that's cool. Impressive.
Yeah, some really good stuff there.
I bet not.
So what I have on my agenda now is this is where we're probably going to need to, we're going to have to switch the microphones, turn off the broadcast part, because the board's going to discuss the merits of the Crawford Award and the ones you had submitted. So Dave, are you still online? Hello, Dave?
I mean, Ken?
Or Ken, I'm sorry, Dave's here.
Dave's here.
I'm sorry, Ken. Ken, are you still online? I see you.
Yes, I'm here.
So Paul, for Ken to participate but not broadcast all of it, we're
So-
thinking, should he just call into a phone and we
No,
conference call him in?
At this point, we can go into private chambers, private discussion.
Okay,
I believe only, if we could have Ben leave the video conference or any other folks, we can move into a separate virtual.
well, we want the
space.
others to stay because we're going to come back to him when we get done.
Okay,
So we just want,
do we just have one?
we just have one, Ken, that needs to,
Okay, if we could email him a different room to hop into.
okay, I don't know how to do that.
Who has-
I mean, do you mean just like create a new Google Meet?
So we're going to send him to a different Google Meet and join in.
I can do that. Can I send you that, Ken?
Yeah, we can sure try.
And we'll just turn off the mic for the rest of you and we'll be back in a few minutes. So are you gonna do that, Jay, or do you want me to?
So we have,
I can create a new Google Meet here and just send it to him.
if you want to do that and join in.
Bill, do I need to be in for it too then, or no?
The secretary?
Cheryl?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
She's
We can just say what the decision was.
Have no control.
Carmen, if you would go ahead and, at this point, put the YouTube and recording Knudsen nowadays, this year.
We have that,
Oh, okay.
but
It's nice and cool.
yeah. And it cools, like last night, it was 52 at my house.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
It was in the 40s.
Get that bigger.
Was it really? Wow. Camas? How clear was it, Camas? Was it a big improvement over yesterday?
So are the microphones working?
We are.
Ken, just join.
I am seeing the audio. Yeah.
So let's see. Riley, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. I'm just looking for someone to unmute and say hello. So I'll turn it back to.
If I can, let me just make sure the recording's going and.
Okay, because we're going to wrap it up. You make sure that we're recording.
That we,
That's good.
Recording's live.
Someone said recording is live. I think that was Carmen.
Excellent, we're good to go.
Thank you, Carmen.
Welcome.
Okay. That was her. So it's all yours, Alyssa.
Great. In compliance with Utah's Open Meeting Act, we are resuming our meeting. And we did make a selection on the Crawford nomination. We'll learn a little bit more of that later on. And then we also will be finding out a little bit more about the State Mapping Advisory Committee chair, moving on that. And is there anything else that we need to discuss at this point?
Do we have anyone from the public online? I'm just asking. And if we do, it doesn't look like, okay. Just want to make sure we gave them an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Was Mike Vandenberg going to say something to us?
Yeah, he is. I just thought we'd bring this to a close and
Oh,
we'll
okay.
have Mike come.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't put it on the agenda for the public.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was there anything else, anybody from the board wanted to contribute? I just wanted to, then I'll just close saying that thank you on behalf of the board. We're in appreciation and admiration for all of the work that UGS does, and let us know what else we can do to help continue all this amazing work. So in that, it is now.
Do we need a motion to close?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. But it's now 12 o'clock and 12 o'clock PM, and this meeting is now, do we need a motion to close?
Yes.
Okay.
Someone says
We
no,
always
someone
have in the
says yes.
past.
Okay, so we need a motion to close.
I'll make that
I don't-
motion.
Okay, so Sam will make that motion
I'll second it.
and Rick seconds that. So at noon, this meeting is now adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay
I
and
know.
Paul.